Chapter 728. The next second, Superman Lee also knelt on the floor and said respectfully, "I am Superman Lee from a wealthy family in Hong Kong. Greetings, God Jiang. I wish you a long life." After that, Wan Chili also knelt on the floor, trembling. Wan Chili greets Master Kong. The old man has rebuilt the 9-story pagoda. The old man hopes that you can accept him as your disciple. Greetings, Immortal Jiang. Including Xiao Shikuan, the rest of the tycoons and celebrities who came from the Chinese Redbutt Hall. They also scrambled to kneel down towards Jiang Tian. Their eyes were filled with reverence as if they had seen a god. Greetings, Master Kong. I am Su Maozhai. In the end, even the guardian of Hong Kong, Su Maozhai, knelt before Jiang Tian. Everyone was dumbfounded. They felt as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. Everyone's body was stiff and motionless as if they were clay sculptures. It was a shocking scene. They had thought that these bigwigs were here to help the 3 major societies and to suppress Jiang Tian. After all, Superman Lee had invited the 3 major societies to come. It was obvious that he was on Wei Duangong's side. Many of them thought that Jiang Tian would not be able to handle it. After all, these bigwigs were too powerful and had too much power. But they did not expect this to happen. This Chinese kid was so overbearing that even the tycoons from Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan had to bow down to him. At this time, some of the shrewd, rich and famous people had a thoughtful look on their faces as they came to a realization. Great. What a good plan. Obviously, this Mr. Jiang had purposely asked Superman Lee to invite Wei Duangong and the rest of the tycoons to come and kill them all. Superman Lee, you are too cunning. At the same time, some people finally realized what was going on. Jiang Tian had been humiliating Li Zhikai since the beginning, but Li Zhikai didn't stop him. Li Zhikai was obviously watching these tycoons die to get rid of the dissidents. Li Zhikai, you are as cunning as your father. Oh my God. Who is he? Don't tell me he is the 3rd generation of the Chinese Red Army. Are you stupid? Even the leader of the country would not make Superman Lee and the rest kneel before him. Maybe he is the illegitimate son of the US President or the British Prime Minister. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so respectful. How is that possible? He's clearly yellow. When did yellow people become the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Everyone started whispering to each other. The scene before their eyes was too shocking. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, as if it was a joke. Everyone, please rise. Jiang Tian raised his hands and smiled faintly. You are all legitimate businessmen. You have made contributions to the country and the nation by making the local economy prosper and create jobs so that the people can live and work in peace. As for your children, it's just a small conflict with me. If I wanted to kill them, I wouldn't have waited until now. Only then did everyone dare to stand up and secretly let out a sigh of relief. These words meant that no one would die. Meanwhile, Yi Zhantian, the director of the Central Liaison Office, Fang Gui and other politicians were impressed by Jiang Tian. Master Kong dealt with matters in an orderly manner. He was disciplined and had a good grasp of the big picture. Only such a person could control a country. A man who does not know but is not enraged, is he not a gentleman? Grandmaster Jiang is broad-minded and truly has the demeanor of a gentleman. Superman Lee was full of admiration for Feng Yu. Suddenly Xiao Shikuan waved at Xiao Yunhao. Immortal Jiang, this is my son Xiao Yunhao. He will work for you from now on. What? Work for him? Xiao Yunhao could not believe what he was hearing. Then Xiao Shikuan looked around and sighed. There is something that the old man did wrong. Master Kong is the developer of Sidoni's Xingyuan village for immortals. These villas can prolong people's lives. Each of them is worth over $1 billion USD. There are more than 1,000 of them. These projects conflict with the Xiao family's high-end real estate projects. Under the pressure of the village for immortals, we did not manage to sell any of them. I'm afraid that the Xiao family's cash flow will only last for another month. He shook his head in shame. I was muddle-headed and desperate. I instructed the Hong Kong media to ban the Immortal Healing Village and even sent a public relations team to slander the Immortal Healing Village in Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan. I seriously damaged the reputation of the Medicine King Group and the Immortal Healing Village. He bowed to Jiang Tian and said, however, Master Kong did not forgive me. However, Grandmaster Jiang is a magnanimous man. Not only did he let me off, he even asked Mr. Chen Zhenming and Ms. Jiang Lin to talk to me and help me. Now Mr. Jiang has invested in Xiao Enterprise with his technology and owns 51% of the shares. From now on, Xiao Enterprise will be renamed as the Village for Immortals. I was talking to Mr. Qin Jinming and Ms. Jiang Lin upstairs just now. What? What kind of technology is worth billions of HKD? I think Mr. Xiao was forced to do this. Some of them could not believe it and started to whisper among themselves. He has become the biggest shareholder of the Xiao family. Wu Chuchu could not believe her eyes. I'm going to be screwed. I'm doomed. Sun Jiao's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Only Wu Jiro's face was as pale as a sheet. She did not say a word, but her body was shaking uncontrollably. So he is really something. He could defeat Xiang Chong, beat Wei Duangong and make Superman Li kowtow to him. So he really does own thousands of villas and each one of them is worth billions of USD. So Xiao Shikuan's family is really having a hard time selling their properties. He has been helping me. So he was not bluffing or lying. I was blind to not see his true colors. That's why I missed him. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. In the end it turned into a strong sense of regret. The woman's nose turned sour and she could no longer control herself. Sparkling and translucent tears gushed out of her eyes. Of course she was not referring to the relationship between a man and a woman. After all, Jiang Tian was already married and had no intention of taking in a concubine. She had missed him. If she treated Jiang Tian as a friend, if she became Jiang Tian's female companion tonight, or even if she was less arrogant and disdainful, but more respectful and friendly, or even if she was not hostile to Jiang Tian, she would be able to obtain immeasurable benefits. But don't think that Mr. Jiang has taken advantage of me. Xiao Shikuan smiled when he heard everyone's discussion. In fact, after Immortal Jiang, no, even after his disciples' renovation, those villas of mine will become blessed paradises. Their value will double, triple, quadruple. That's right. Superman Li smiled enviously. Brother Xiao, you have profited from your misfortune. You have become friends with Mr. Jiang. He also wanted to work with Jiang Tian, but his projects were just ordinary commercial real estate and condominium projects. Xiao Shikuan's villas were high-end and could work with Jiang Tian's array formation. Come. Yunhao, why aren't you greeting Immortal Jiang? It's your fortune to be able to work for Mr. Jiang. I know him. Jiang Tian did not comment. Seeing Jiang Tian's unhappy face, Xiao Shikuan hurriedly asked, Did Yunhao offend Master Kong? Xiao Yunhao's face flushed red. He was extremely embarrassed. Originally he wanted to challenge Jiang Tian, but now he had become Jiang Tian's employee. Humiliation, shock, regret, frustration. His expression changed a few times before it turned into despair. He knelt on the ground and said in a trembling voice, Master Kong, I know I was wrong. He could not bear the pressure that Jiang Tian was exuding. It possessed the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, to topple mountains and overturn seas. My dad Wan Qili is upstairs. After his meeting he will come and kill you all. At this time, Zhen Shuai added insult to injury, imitating Wan Chuha's earlier clamor and mockingly mocking him. Wan Chuha, aren't you arrogant? Don't kneel if you have the guts. Don't make me kneel. Aren't you very arrogant? Show me how arrogant you can be. Wan Chuha's face flushed red as if he had been slapped a few times. His father had kowtowed to Jiang Tian. What right did he have to challenge Jiang Tian? Wan Qili bowed deeply to Zhen Shuai and said with a smile, Young master, I have offended you. Young master Zhen, my son has offended you just now. I've already contacted Miss Lingling and she'll be accompanying you tonight. Zhen Shuai nodded, then looked at Wan Chuha and said, Wan Chuha, your dad is amazing. Wan Chuha, your daddy is so awesome. He actually knows how to be a pimp. I admire you. But Chuha seems to like that female star a lot. He won't have a problem with that, right? Wan Qili was an experienced man. He could keep his composure, or rather he was thick-skinned enough. Young Master Zhen has a good sense of humor. It is an old man's honor to be a pimp for young Master Zhen. But Wan Chuha was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Although he had been suppressing his anger, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He stomped his feet and gritted his teeth. Dad, why are you doing this? Aren't you ashamed? Who do they think they are? Do they deserve you to be so humble? So what if they have money? So what if they have power in China? So what if they have Sidoni's immortal healing village? We are in Taiwan. His power and connections in China are useless. We don't have real estate. Actually, from Wan Chuha's point of view, what he said wasn't wrong. He was in Taiwan and was in a gang. No matter how powerful your background was, he could just ignore you. He had real estate and medicine, but his family wasn't in the real estate or medicine business. What could he do to him? Don't be rude. Quickly kneel and apologize to Mr. Jiang and young Master Zhen. Wan Qili wanted to cover his mouth. His heart couldn't take it anymore. But Wan Chuha was still angry. How could he hold it in? Why should I apologize? Why should I kneel and apologize? What do they have? They know martial arts. My Wan family has tens of thousands of brothers in the United Bamboo Gang. We can't deal with them. But, without saying a word, Wan Qili pulled out a pistol from one of his subordinates and shot him in the leg. He shouted sternly, "Tens of thousands of brothers. They're nothing." Master Kong had once defeated 28,000 mixed army and air brigades in Japan. He had once suppressed 300,000 soldiers in France. He is a living immortal. He even killed Gong Yile of the 9-story pagoda. How many heads do you have? Enough for immortal Jiang to kill. Yamaguchi Gumi, De Huan and fucking gang are all Master Kang's disciples. Mitsui Group, Star Moon Group, and even America's California Group all listen to Master Kang's orders. You still dare to be arrogant in front of him? You blind dog, are you trying to get me killed? Chapter 729. Hiss. He is the legendary god Sidoni. The one who can suppress a country all by himself. Yeah. I've seen some news about him on the internet, but it was deleted by River Crab God. Oh my god. No wonder he is so confident. So he's actually a real god. He defeated the French army alone and he can fight tanks and fighter jets. If he is not a god, then what is he? Oh my god. The Yamaguchi Group, the fucking gang, the Mitsui Group, the Californian Group. Which one of them isn't an enemy? Sigh. He is too kind. He is trying to maintain the legal environment in Hong Kong. Otherwise he would have killed Xianxia and the rest of them. For a time, everyone was dumbstruck once more, and they looked at Jiang Tian with fear and disbelief. What? Even old immortal Gong was killed by him. He's so powerful. At this moment Wan Chuha couldn't take it anymore, and his face turned pale from fright as he knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Master Kong, Lord Jin, I know I was wrong. Please spare my life. Wan Chuha begged in a hoarse voice. Master Kong, please calm down. Look, he knows he was wrong. I will break his limbs as punishment when I get back. At this time Wan Qili also looked at Jiang Tian pleadingly. However, Jiang Tian did not say a word. He sipped his tea expressionlessly and did not even look at him. Wan Qili's heart skipped a beat and his heart fell into the abyss. He knew that his son's life was in danger. His straight back bent and his white hair trembled. It was as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. Bang! He threw a pistol in front of Wan Chuha, took a deep breath and said in a trembling voice, "Chuha, kill yourself for the sake of your family. Otherwise the entire family will suffer. Remember, don't fight for a woman in your next life. It's not worth it. A woman who deserves your love won't let you compete with others, fight with others and take risks." Everyone was silent. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. They only felt a chill run down their spines and straight to the top of their heads. Jiang Tian didn't say a word, and the leader of the United Bamboo Gang had to kill his own son to quench his anger. Just how powerful was this? What was power? Power depends on how much you can control and influence others. The power that Jiang Tian displayed at this moment was like that of an ancient emperor. He killed people without saying a word, which caused people's hearts to palpitate. This was 10 times, no, 100 times more terrifying than personally killing someone. A trace of despair and sorrow appeared on Wan Chuha's face. He picked up the pistol and pressed it against his forehead. Dad, I don't blame you. It's all my fault. I'm used to being arrogant and despotic. It's all my fault for being blind. Tears welled up in Wan Chuha's eyes as his heart was filled with regret. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly aimed his pistol at Luo Ziho and fired a shot. And you bitch, go and fan the flames. I only said one sentence. Luo Ziho couldn't believe it. Blood gushed out from his chest. He fell to the ground and died in the blink of an eye. See, bad guys always die because they talk too much. Zhen Shuai slapped his thigh and laughed. The police officers hadn't reacted yet. Wan Chuha aimed a shot at his forehead and he fell to the ground, dead. The whole place was dead silent. No one dared to say a word. Wu Chuchu was so scared that her face had turned pale. She was peeing like the Yellow River. "Ah, I came here to have a drink with everyone." In the silence, Jiang Tian stood up and stepped over the pool of blood. He picked up a glass of wine and smiled. "I didn't expect to spoil everyone's mood. I'm really sorry. I wish everyone a happy Lantern Festival in advance." Congratulations to Master Kong for a happy Lantern Festival. Congratulations to Master Kong for making progress every day. May he live for 10,000 years and have a deep Dharma power. Everyone raised their glasses and drank in a hurry. They were afraid that they would be scolded by Jiang Tian if they were late. After drinking this glass of wine, Jiang Tian walked towards the banquet hall with a few of his attendants. Yizhantian Hera, the director of the joint office, Supermanly, and other high-ranking officials and rich people crowded around to send him off. The surrounding crowd parted like a tide, opening up a path for him. Everyone looked at Jiang Tian with a complicated gaze. There was fear, shock, and doubt, but no one dared to show the slightest disrespect. Wu Zhirua wanted to say something but stopped. She wanted to follow Jiang Tian, but after thinking about it she stopped in her tracks with a pale face. "Zai, some relationships are missed. There's no medicine for regret in the world. How can you start over?" Su Zixuan noticed her and raised her glass. A trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. Only Xu Min was shameless to a whole new level. She ran to catch up with Zhen Shuai and whispered, "Young Master Zhen, actually I found that you're very charming. I like handsome guys from the mainland the most." The shyness on her face had reached an unprofessional level. It was extremely seductive and charming. "I wonder if I'll have a chance to have a long talk with you at the hotel tonight?" "Huh. Lingling is already waiting at the hotel. Threesome. Don't you mind?" Zhen Shuai whispered embarrassedly. "What's there to mind? Humph, I represent Hong Kong's female celebrities to compete with those from Taiwan's female celebrities." Xu Min was already hugging Zhen Shuai's arm, leaning close to his ear and whispering into his ear. "Then remember to bring your famous work, Jade Girl Heart Sutra. I loved it when I was young." Zhen Shuai smiled and whispered, "Young Master Zhen, you're so bad. But don't worry, I will." Xu Min punched his chest with her small fists. She then took Zhen Shuai's business card and left. "Damn, she's already so old. Look at those crow's feet. They can pinch a person to death. How can you still do that?" Qingyi glanced at Zhen Shuai. "You're a beast in human clothing." Jiang Chao despised. "What do you guys know? My childhood dream. My childhood dream has already come true. What about you guys?" Zhen Shuai had a look of disdain on his face that said, "You don't understand my taste." Peninsula Hotel, Jiang Tian's room. Disciple Yizhantian greets master. Yizhantian hurried to Jiang Tian. He lifted the hem of his long robe and kowtowed to Jiang Tian. "Brother Zhantian, I'm just giving you a few pointers. Don't be so courteous." Jiang Tian smiled and helped him up. Hera greets Master Kong. Hera and Su Maozhai also bowed respectfully. Yizhantian, Su Maozhai and Hera sat down. Jiang Tian went straight to the point. "Zhantian, why did you come to see me?" "Master, after your battle in Wudang, Huaxia's martial arts community has been in turmoil. Several grandmasters have died," Yizhantian said with a serious face. "Grandmasters don't die so easily." Jiang Tian was surprised. "Including the Dharma Fist Master Wei Hai, Tai Chi Sword Master Chen Jiling, and Cloud Rubbing Hand Hong Tian," Yizhantian said. "In addition, several immortal state warriors have died in the Brahmin of India, Myanmar and Thailand. Roughly speaking, there are 10 transcendent grandmasters, 3 semi-immortal state warriors and 1 immortal state warrior. He is the Brahmin Master Ji Wu." As he spoke, he handed over a map with the time, place and dead overlords marked on it. "Master Ji Wu. I know him. He was a Brahmin Master Ji Wu a few decades ago. He was of the same generation as your father." Su Maozhai exclaimed. "Yes, that's him," Yizhantian said. "Master Kong may not have heard of him, but Master Qinglian, you must remember him. He is Master Ji Wu's disciple. I've heard of these people in Huaxia. They are the kind of people who don't care about Jianghu." Jiang Tian looked at the map and asked curiously. "These people have never participated in the martial arts disputes in recent years and have no connection with the Sky Alliance. Who did they offend?" Master Kong, more than 30 members of the Palace of Gods have been killed in Europe. Even the demon hunter, Van Helsing, was killed? Before Yi Zhantian could answer, Hera frowned and interrupted with a worried look. Van Helsing, I've heard of him. He was on the power rankings 100 years ago. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. No wonder Hera was so cooperative. It seemed that the Palace of Gods couldn't handle the demons in Europe and needed his help to suppress them. It's all because he didn't leave any clues. Yi Zhantian said in a low voice. They were all annihilated. Not even a chicken or a dog was spared. Moreover, their deaths were very strange. How so? Jiang Tian said lightly. Master Kong, please take a look. Chao Jinjia, who had come with Yi Zhantian, stepped forward and took out a military-grade computer. She clicked on a video and said, "This is the surveillance footage of the Bodhidharma Fist Master Wei Hai's house on the night of the incident. No one appeared from the beginning to the end, but the Wei family members fell one by one. It's the same for the other surveillance footage. There's no sign of fighting. It's as if they suddenly died of natural causes." Stop. Jiang Tian's face darkened after a glance. Chao Jinjia immediately pressed the mouse and stopped the video. Then she zoomed in. Do you see it? Jiang Tian said lightly. There's a black demonic aura here. It should be the one I saw in the ancient martial arts sect. He's using the death curse technique, which is one of the most vicious demonic arts. Death curse spell? Is it more powerful than your heart's blooming joy? Yi Zhantian couldn't believe it. You can say that. Jiang Tian's face became serious for the first time. This spell is a type of spiritual attack that can only be performed by the demon body of purgatory. Once the spiritual power is activated, the target's divine soul will be destroyed and they will die an unnatural death. Isn't that similar to the Death Note? That's so scary. Chao Jinjia's face turned pale. What's the Death Note? A Dharma artifact? Jiang Tian rarely paid attention to such new things. It's not a Dharma artifact. It's fictional, Chao Jinjia explained with a blushing face. Ha, you're reading Japanese cartoons? Jiang Tian said with a half-smile after hearing that. Chao Jinjia was embarrassed. Jiang Tian nodded. But Jinjia's analogy is very accurate. To be exact, the death curse technique is more powerful than the Death Note. There's no need to write anything. Master, do you have any idea how to capture or restrain this person? Yi Zhantian asked. Don't worry. Jiang Tian tapped his finger on the armrest and said, It's very likely that this person is coming for me. If I'm not mistaken, he should be the young master of the Nye family, Nye Mingyuan. Chapter 730. The Nye family of the Cherry Blossom Society? Yi Zhantian also had a certain understanding of this family. He slapped his thigh and said, When you were in seclusion at the ancient martial arts sect, I went there to investigate. I heard that Nye Shirman had brought him to Wudang as well. But I found that he had disappeared. Did he really turn into a demon? Isn't he just an ordinary person? How did he become so powerful? Chao Jinjia was puzzled. He is indeed an ordinary person. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness as he said softly, The demonic body of purgatory is an extremely rare hidden body constitution. This kind of physique would not be awakened without experiencing a great tribulation, great tempering and great pain. He looks no different from an ordinary person. Even I can't tell. Jiang Tian sighed. I didn't do a clean job of wiping out the Nye family. Not only did I fail to kill him, but I also awakened his potential. Now, I can see that he was the one who disguised himself as Tang Linglong and killed several people in Wudang. He probably thought that he was still weaker than me, so he fled. Master, what do you think his cultivation is now? Yi Zhantian asked nervously. The demonic body of purgatory can devour souls and soul energy. It can also devour blood essence. Can turn everything of others into its own power. Jiang Tian said slowly. He really is a demon. Suma Zhai's face paled. Jiang Tian sighed. Can be said that the cultivation speed of the demonic body of purgatory is one of the fastest in the universe. It may be even faster than Qingri's immortal body and my divine body of Gingjin. Master, what did you say? Faster than your cultivation speed? Isn't that troublesome? Everyone's face paled as they exclaimed. Don't worry. Jiang Tian waved his hand, sipped his tea and said calmly, I have my ways to deal with him. Yi Zhantian said, But will he do anything to your family? Your father is still in Jinling. He has been to Jinling. First Jinling, then Hong Kong, then Southeast Asia, and finally Europe. Jiang Tian drew a curved line on the map and said, "That's right. But the jade marrow talisman I gave my father can restrain him. He might not be able to touch it, or he might not be willing to touch it. That's why he went to Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, and Europe to improve his cultivation. This person's hatred towards me is monstrous, and he's extremely patient. I'm guessing that he won't expose himself before he reaches the level where he can fight me." "Why do you think so, Master?" Yi Zhantian asked in surprise. "He only kills those who have nothing to do with me." Jiang Tian said slowly, "In Wuxia he did not touch the Long Formation, nor did he touch my old friends. In Southeast Asia, they did not encounter the Singapore Chinese Club. It's clear that he doesn't want me to know about his existence. It should be like what Master said. When we went to Wudong to investigate, we almost missed this person. Almost all the Wudong disciples who knew of his identity died." Yi Zhantian added. "But there's a list of disciples in Wudong. I guess Nie Mingyuan didn't know about it, or he couldn't find it, so he didn't destroy it. That's how we found out about him." Jiang Tian nodded. "But when he feels that his cultivation is about the same as mine or even surpasses mine, he'll kill me in one fell swoop. Master, we can't let him live." Yi Zhantian's eyes flashed coldly. "Kill him in the cradle while he's still weak. This person's murderous intent is monstrous. I'm afraid he'll be the scourge of the martial arts world." Hera nodded. "I think we should chase him down and search the whole world. We should bring him to justice as soon as possible. Master Kong, if we count it this way, he's killed more people than you." Chao Jinjia whispered. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Yi Zhantian glared at her and said, "Master Kong has never killed the innocent. He only kills those who deserve to be killed. Traitors who collude with foreign countries or evil masters who bully the weak." Chao Jinjia stuck out her tongue and dared not speak. "Zhantian, Hera, it's going to be hard to catch him." Jiang Tian shook his head. "He can change his appearance and disguise his identity. I'm the only one who can recognize him. In other words, even the Long Formation or Taiching sect's investigation will be useless, let alone ordinary military police and special intelligence agencies. And with my current cultivation, it's almost impossible for me to search the whole world alone. Then what should we do? He's a big problem after all." Yi Zhantian said worriedly. "Don't be afraid of a thief stealing, but a thief keeping an eye on you in the dark every day. How disgusting. This Nie Mingyuan is like a rat. So wretched. Disgusting. Let him hit the shore, I'll stand firm." Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. "No matter how strong his cultivation is, no matter how special his physique is, he'll still die if he meets me. I have a way to lure him out." 3 days later, it was Qin Jinming and Jiang Lin's wedding day. Jiang Tian and a group of childhood friends witnessed the couple tie the knot and put on the wedding rings for each other. "Qin Jinming, Jiang Tian, you're not human. You're getting married first. I'm still a single dog. I'm so pitiful." Zhen Shuai had too much to drink. Tears streamed down his face. "Shame on you. Didn't you go on a threesome with Ling Ling and Xu Min recently?" Qing Yi complained. "It's not a threesome. How could it be a threesome?" Zhen Shuai cried until he was out of breath. He waved his hand and said, "It's a threesome. Even the fake twins under Yang Shouqing's banner are participating. I really want to beat Zhen Shuai up. If he's a single dog, who isn't a single dog?" Jiang Chao complained. "It's all an act. Even the moans are fake. There's no real feeling." Zhen Shuai's face was dejected. Then he wailed. "I really want to fall in love. I really want a real relationship. Sigh, this might be one of the few times I'll see them before I leave Earth. Some people just break up after a while." Looking at them laughing bitterly, Jiang Tian's lips curled into a smile. He took a sip of white wine and sighed in his heart. There was a difference between people. Jiang Tian was now the most powerful person in the world. He had never lost a battle and was known as the Earth deity Jiang. He controlled Sidonia and had trillions of wealth. He hunted down a country and was known as the Jianglai nation. Zhen Shuai, Tan Guangxiu, Qing Yi and the others were considered the elites of the younger generation, but the gap between them and Jiang Tian was getting bigger and bigger. There was no such thing as an eternal banquet. On the night of the wedding, Jiang Tian said goodbye to Qin Jinming and the other childhood friends and planned to rush to Hong Kong International Airport. He wanted to go to Russia and then to the northern islands to find the place where the nine-sword deity had fallen, the sword tomb. Zhen Shuai, there must be a limit to your sensual pleasures. Before they parted, Jiang Tian patted Zhen Shuai's shoulder and said earnestly, find a good girl and marry a good girl. Hurry up and find a good girl to marry. It's good for your health and your career. Brother Tian, I understand. Zhen Shuai's face gradually became serious and said seriously, my family had been bullied by Nie Mingyuan and the other tycoons in Jin City. I've been holding back my anger for a long time. He was touched. If he wasn't a good friend, he wouldn't have said that to you. He said seriously, I finally vented my anger after coming to Hong Kong. Still the best to bully people with you. But it's nothing. I'll focus on my business from now on. I'll find a good girl to marry and have kids with. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. He could understand Zhen Shuai's attitude. I think Yuan Kersen is a good girl. Do you think I have a chance with her? Suddenly, Zhen Shuai glanced at Yuan Kersen, who was chatting with Jiang Lin in the distance, and winked at her. Yuan Kersen came back to Hong Kong to see Jiang Tian after she finished her tour with the veterans. She is a kind and caring girl. If you can get her, it will be your blessing. Jiang Tian patted his shoulder and said softly, she doesn't care about money. She doesn't care about money. You have to show your sincerity. But don't let her know what you did. Otherwise she won't be interested in you. I understand. As long as I have a chance with her, I will turn over a new leaf. Zhen Shuai was overjoyed. After that, Jiang Tian turned down everyone's offer to send him off. He went to the parking lot and got into a Mercedes-Benz. Su Zixuan was driving while Fang Minxia sat in the passenger seat. Master Kong, here is your ID card, passport and ticket. Fang Minxia handed over a folder with both hands. She was very respectful and her eyes were filled with admiration. Thank you. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Jiang Tian's identity was very sensitive. He was under the surveillance of all the superpowers in the world. If Jiang Tian went to Russia, Russia would be on high alert. Jiang Tian didn't want to provoke this military superpower. Secondly, he didn't want the sword vault to be discovered by more people. So he had to hide his identity. However, with Fang Gui's help, everything was solved. He immediately got a set of ID card and passport. They didn't speak a word until they arrived at the airport. Jiang Tian was about to go to the departure lounge. Suddenly, Fang Minxia pulled his sleeve and said solemnly, Mr. Jiang, I want to thank you. Thank me? What is there to thank me for? Jiang Tian stopped in his tracks and asked in confusion. Fang Minxia was slightly moved and said, did you know? My mother was killed by Xianxia. 5 years ago, when my father was investigating Xianxia group, my mother was hit by a minibus and died in a car accident. My 8-year-old brother was also on the minibus. I once saw my father fly into a rage and cry, but there was nothing he could do. Because he couldn't find any evidence at all. He couldn't find any evidence that pointed to the criminal organization Xianxia group. My father was my idol. After my mother died, this idol collapsed perfectly. All these years he even played basketball with Wei Duangong. They called each other friends. I think he's useless. He's a coward. I feel that he's afraid. He doesn't dare to declare war on the evil forces. He tolerates and nurtures evil. He helps the evil. He even forgot that his wife was killed by a black organization. A trace of sadness flashed in Fang Minxia's eyes. But I don't know when I started to feel that these evil forces are invincible. Chapter 731. They have existed for hundreds of years. They have infiltrated the Hong Kong people's daily life, from the film industry to the financial industry, down to the minibuses, taxis, food markets. Everything. The Hong Kong people are used to their existence. The media is used to it. Even the police are used to it. It's as if the existence of these evil forces is a matter of course. But what you did told me that there is no evil force that cannot be defeated. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. Until now, I finally understood that all these years, my father has never forgotten to avenge my mother. He has also been collecting relevant evidence. From now on, I will be fearless and dare to declare war on the evil forces. Just like my father. So, I want to thank you. I want to thank every ordinary person who dares to fight against the evil forces. At this point she closed her legs and straightened her body in her police uniform. She raised her right hand to her eyebrows and gave Zhang Tian a standard police salute. Her dainty face was filled with reverence, but her beautiful eyes were filled with sparkling and translucent tears. Good luck. Your father is a good police officer. Sometimes you need a way to fight. Zhang Tian patted her shoulder, turned around and walked towards the departure hall. Zhou Xian and Fang Minxia were reluctant to part with him. Fang Minxia craned her neck and looked at Zhang Tian's disappearing figure at the ticket gate. He's gone. Zhou Xian sighed. Yeah, he's gone. Fang Minxia nodded. Her eyes were filled with loneliness. Little witch Zhou Xian pursed her lips and smiled bitterly. Don't look anymore. He's gone. He won't come back no matter how much you look. Sigh. Fang Minxia sighed, retracted her gaze and looked at the sky outside the glass window. She wondered if Zhang Tian's flight would pass by there. He is a dragon in the sky. We are not from the same world as him. Zhou Xian sighed. We only have a short interaction with him. Yeah. Fang Minxia retracted her gaze and smiled. It's already good to have a short interaction with him. I think I'm very lucky. Me too. Zhou Xian held Fang Minxia's arm and walked out of the airport together. When Zhang Tian set off for Russia. On Mount Immerse, the red sun was overflowing and the clouds and mist were everywhere. Early in the morning, many disciples were cultivating on the training field as usual. Suddenly an earth-shattering roar was heard. Everyone raised their heads in astonishment, only to see a white chain that pierced through heaven and earth gushing out from a large hull, shooting straight into the sky. Amidst the white mist, one could vaguely see that this person had a leopard head and round eyes. His face was ferocious and his eyes were like lightning. He had a wide mouth that revealed his white teeth, a pair of small eyes that were like black beans, and a black beard that was like a sword or a steel brush. Although this person wore a green Taoist robe, he did not have the temperament of a monk at all. Instead, he was ferocious and had a strong murderous aura like a peerless general. This is Zhou Xian, who was in the middle of cultivating with her sword in hand, was suddenly startled. She was so scared that her sword almost fell to the ground. Sect leader has come out of seclusion. Rumble. The void trembled and a person shot out on a sword, instantly crossing hundreds of meters of the void and landing on the training field. Greetings, Sect Master. Many elders, hall leaders and disciples all kowtowed on the ground with respectful eyes. Whoosh. The sect leader of Mount Immerse, Hao Taichung, opened his mouth and took a deep breath. The blood-colored sword suddenly shrank, fell into his mouth and was swallowed by him. Using your body to nourish the sword. Seeing this scene, several elders who had reached the god realm were even more shocked, and the reverence on their faces was even more obvious. Congratulations, sect leader, for successfully cultivating the blood god sword. This time you have stepped into the real immortal realm. Hao Taichung did not answer and did not care. He just glanced around and asked in a loud voice, "Who is Zhou Xian?" Disciple Zhou Xian greets sect leader. In the crowd, Zhou Xian, who was dressed in plain clothes and looked even more otherworldly, quickly stepped forward and bowed. I have seen the incomplete map of the ruins of immortality. It is real. From now on you are my personal disciple. Hao Taichung said decisively. Thank you, Master. Zhou Xian's eyes were filled with excitement. She quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed, secretly hating in her heart. Jiangtian, oh Jiangtian, Hao Taichung is already at the immortal realm. Killing you, is it not easy? Sect leader, you came out of seclusion this time for? An elder asked. It is time for the sword tomb, which is opened once every 11 years. Last time I was in seclusion and missed it. This time no matter what, I have to go. Hao Taichung flung his sleeves and said disdainfully, by the way, I will kill Kong Teichu. As he spoke, two sword lights shot out from his eyes as if they could cut the world. Zhou Xian was surprised and quickly bowed. Master, this time I am willing to go with you. Yes. Hao Taichung said with an evil face. He killed my beloved disciple Bai Diqing and my sister Hao Hongmei. This time I will let him know the real power of Mount Immerse sword sect. In Diansong. Boom. A loud noise came. Many disciples saw it. The Moyun peak of Diansong's 19 peaks was directly smashed by a mountain that fell from the sky. Is there an attack from the strong? Who? Who is causing trouble? Could it be a powerful spellmaster? Many disciples were shocked, holding their swords and waiting. No. It is not an attack from the strong. The sect leader has broken through. Half-step human immortal moving mountain realm. Elder Liang Zichen looked in the direction of the Moyun Peak with a face full of surprise. Everyone saw a figure wearing a white Taoist robe, stepping on a white cloud, crossing a distance of several kilometers and flying over. When this person landed, it was a young man with sword-like eyebrows, bright eyes, shoulder-length hair and a strong aura. If he was not wearing a special Taoist robe with embroidered patterns and holding a cloud-patterned sword that only the sect leader could use, no one would know that this was the sect leader of Gensong Zhou Xian. Rejuvenation, is this the immortality realm? Liang Zichen was shocked and dumbfounded. Congratulations, sect leader, for breaking through to half-step human immortal. Congratulations, sect leader, for having a deep cultivation and a long life. Liang Zichen led many elders and disciples to kneel on the ground, respectfully praying. Rise. Zhou Zixuan said with a gratified face. I have to thank Kong Teichu for giving me so much pressure, allowing me to advance bravely. Within a year I have broken through the moving mountain, opening heaven and immortality realms, and finally reached half-step human immortal. I have truly stepped into the human immortal realm. Liang Zichen heard this and hesitated. Zichen, you and the 5 elders will follow me down the mountain to the sword tomb in the extreme north. Zhou Zixuan said in a deep voice. Senior brother, are we not going to avenge Hai Tao and the others' deaths? Liang Zichen frowned. No. Zhou Zixuan's eyes were filled with greed. He sneered and said, this time I will force Kong Teichu to tell me his cultivation technique. I heard that he might have come from the ruins of immortality. At Tianshan, thousands of miles of snow were covered in ice. Under the gaze of many disciples. Crack. A stone door that had been sealed in ice for decades suddenly cracked open. Then the door opened with a loud bang and an old man in a long robe walked out. This old man has been in seclusion for 30 years. Cough cough cough. I'm finally out. I'm afraid the world doesn't know me anymore. The old man leaned on a wilted plum cane and covered his mouth with his fist. He coughed repeatedly and a sickly flush appeared on his sallow face. This old man was wearing an old sheepskin robe like an old farmer in the Qing dynasty. His face was haggard and his aura was weak. His back was hunched and he looked old, as if he was about to die. He only spoke one sentence. However, within a radius of 10 miles, billions of snowflakes suddenly stopped in the air as if they were frozen in the air by magic. I heard that a kid called Kong Teichu has risen in the mortal world. He might be a guest from the ruins of immortality and has a supreme cultivation technique. Li Juyo, the sect master of Tianshan, laughed strangely. Then he stepped into the air and flew down the mountain like a dragon. This time, when I come out of seclusion, I must obtain the hidden treasures of the sword catacomb. I will kill Kong Teichu. It was only after he had dashed out for 5 kilometers that the snowflakes in this area started to flutter and drift down. Congratulations, master. I hope you can get the secret of the sword tomb and kill Kong Teichu. Behind him, a group of disciples knelt on the ground as if they wwere looking at a god. Vancouver, Canada. The headquarters of the Hong Sect International. The headquarters of the Hong Sect. It was a 199-story modern building overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The blue glass wall shone brightly under the sunlight. The entire building was solemn and dignified. It was like a blue sword that pierced the sky. On the top floor, there was a super grand hall with an area of 3,000 square meters. However, it was decorated in an antique style. There were carved corridors and painted pavilions. There were small bridges over flowing water, rockery, and 9 winding corridors. It was as if one had stepped into the Suzhou Gardens of the Qing dynasty. Meanwhile, the president of the Hong Sect and many other disciples of the Hong Sect bowed slightly to the coffin. Their faces were filled with anticipation as they looked at a crystal coffin. Inside the coffin lay a young man wearing a Qing dynasty scholar's outfit. Although this person had jet black hair and handsome features, there was not a trace of blood on his body. His skin was sparkling and translucent. Time passed slowly. The sect master of the Hong Sect frowned and heaved a sigh. 100 years ago, the sect master had stopped his lifespan and stopped his blood circulation. The sect master had predicted that the sect master would wake up soon, but now, But for the past few months, the sect master showed no signs of waking up. Could it be that the sect master is truly dead? Just as the president was about to turn around and leave in disappointment, thinking that today was going to be the same as before, suddenly, a crack appeared on the surface of the crystal coffin. Red light flickered and multicolored light gushed out. A vigorous blood energy pervaded the air like clouds and mist. Is the sect master going to wake up? The disciples of the Hong sect looked at each other and saw the joy on each other's faces. Quiet. Don't disturb the sect master. The sect master of the Hong sect glared at the disciples and his body trembled. No one knew if it was out of fear or excitement. Boom. A streak of blood-red light pierced through the roof like a blood-red sword. It had the power to destroy the heavens and earth as it shot towards the heavens. Suddenly, the entire hall was swept away by a crimson tornado. Rocks were sent flying, buildings collapsed, and glass windows shattered. Shards of glass fluttered in the air like butterflies. Everyone was sent flying by a monstrous force and landed on the ground in a sorry state. In the middle of the crimson-red smoke, everyone watched as the figure slowly stood up from the fragments of the coffin. Like a god stepping on the eternal blue sky, he walked over step by step. Chapter 732. Thud. The leader of the Hong sect dropped to his knees and said, I am Situ Lei, the 33rd leader of the Hong sect. It is an honor to meet you, ancestral master. The old man looked around curiously at the cars, buildings, sailing boats and racing boats. Then he pulled himself together and said with a smile, Why don't you keep your hair long? Why are you wearing suits? Don't break the rules of your ancestors. It has been 100 years. The Qing dynasty is gone and so is the Republic of China. Wuxia is ruled by the Han Chinese. The leader of the Hong sect said with a trembling voice. Is the Qing dynasty gone? Situ Zhao's eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life as a complicated expression flashed across his face. The world has changed and the world has changed. It's really not easy for you to protect the foundation of your ancestors. Ancestral master, why are you awake this time? Situ Lei asked. I am waiting for the opening of the sword tomb and the ruins of immortality. Situ Zhao sighed with emotion as if he was unwilling to say more and said in a deep voice, However, I have heard your prayers a while ago. It seems that a powerful man named Kong Teichu has been born. Ancestral master, during the Republic of China, Yi Tianren had defeated us and the Hong sect. We had no choice but to hide in North America. Situ Lei said with grief and indignation. After decades of hard work, we finally recovered and have the foundation to return to China. However, our cooperation with the Great Circle was ruined by Kong Teichu. He had killed Situ Yuanhao and the others. Give me a copy of their information. Situ Zhao flung his sleeves, his eyes flashing with a trace of coldness, and said proudly, I have reached the earth level deity level. I can kill them as easily as killing chickens. Yes. The leader of the Hong sect was overjoyed by the news. Ancestral master, I am sure that the Hong sect will rise again and achieve immortality. At that time, the place where the Nine Swords deity had perished, the sword tomb, was about to open. Many semi-hidden sects in Wuxia were shocked. All the experts in the world gathered, including immortal state warriors and human immortals. More importantly, many people wanted to kill Jiang Tian, rob him of the map of the ruins of immortality, or obtain his cultivation method. Moscow Airport. The lead gray sky was very gloomy and heavy snow was falling. A Boeing 737 cut through the sky, passing through the heavy snow and slowly landing. On the flight, everyone was wrapped in down jackets and thick cotton clothes. It was the beginning of 2011 and spring had not yet begun. The temperature in Moscow was -10 degrees Celsius. Every drop of water turned into ice. Heavy snow was falling from the sky and the ground was covered with ice. However, a figure that stood out from the crowd walked out. He was dressed in plain clothes which looked very thin. There was not a single piece of warm clothing on him. Sir, do you need a warm down jacket? Suddenly, a Chinese girl who got off the plane with him asked. No, thank you. Jiang Tian shook his head. Aren't you cold? The girl asked worriedly. I'm not cold. Jiang Tian's expression was calm. All right. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. She looked cute and innocent. She wrapped the down jacket tightly and said gloomily, It's more than 30 degrees Celsius in Hong Kong. but here it's -10 degrees Celsius. I'm freezing to death. Are you okay? I'm fine. Zhang Tian chuckled and said, I have a special constitution, so I'm not sensitive to the temperature. This low temperature is nothing to me. The two of them chatted as they walked out of the airport. The girl was very talkative and introduced herself to Chen Fan. Her name was Li Wan. Her father was involved in the mining and oil industry in Russia. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Moscow. She came back to Hong Kong to spend the Spring Festival with her mother. Are you really not cold? After they left the airport, Li Wan suddenly grabbed Zhang Tian's hand and didn't want to let go. You are not cold at all. Your hand is like a hand warmer. I was wondering why I felt so warm around you. You're just a little human furnace. Li Wan. Before Zhang Tian could break free from her grip, he heard someone yelling at him. A tall young man walked toward them and said unhappily, Why are you holding someone's hand on the street? Xianxia, it's none of your business. I am not your girlfriend. Li Wan purposely held Zhang Tian's hand tightly and retorted, I like holding his hand. So warm, so cool, so comfortable. She had an intoxicated look on her face as she moaned softly, causing people's imaginations to run wild. Xianxia's face suddenly froze. He was extremely embarrassed. Then he said softly, Moscow is a mess right now. What if you meet a bad guy? I'm just concerned about you. Zhang Tian could tell that Xianxia was Li Wan's admirer, so he didn't want to cause any misunderstanding. He pulled his hand out and said with a smile, Mr. Xiang, you misunderstood me. I'm not a bad guy. I just met Li Wan. Zhang Tian wanted to avoid any misunderstanding. But Xianxia despised him in his heart. Humph, a gigolo who can't even trust a chicken. He must be afraid of my fists. It was just a chance encounter. It was time to say goodbye. But suddenly Li Wan asked enthusiastically, Zhang Tian, where are you going next? Oh, I plan to go to Severnaya Zemlya. I will find a hotel to stay in tonight and find a travel agency tomorrow. Zhang Tian said lightly. Severnaya Zemlya, that's in the Arctic Circle. Li Wan had lived in Russia for many years and knew very well. Although the Arctic tourism is very popular now, the time to go there is still mainly in summer. There are very few tourists going there at this time. Of course, there are also very few travel agencies that carry out this business now. She suddenly had an idea and invited him enthusiastically. How about this, you can stay at my house. Eat some authentic Chinese food and drink a few cups of lao bai. I will help you contact a travel agency tomorrow. It will be much more convenient. Thank you. Zhang Tian also had an indifferent attitude. He thought that it was good to have a local lead the way. Xianxia suddenly became vigilant. Li Wan can't have taken a fancy to this gigolo, right? That's not good. He pulled Li Wan to the side and whispered, We don't know him, how can we let him stay at your house? Narrow-minded. Look at how stingy you are. Li Wan glared at him and said, The Chinese people in the world are one family. He is alone outside with no relatives. He might be bullied. Russia's public security is not as good as China's. We can help him if we can. Xianxia was originally poor and went to Russia alone to work in Li Wan's restaurant. He was hardworking and quite manly. Li Wan's father took a fancy to him and wanted to matchmake him with Li Wan, with the intention of letting him marry into the Li family. But no matter what, it was still up to Li Wan. Since Li Wan said so, he didn't dare to disobey and could only agree. Xianxia's face was gloomy. He silently opened the car door and got into the driver's seat. Come get in. We will be home soon. Li Wan pulled Zhang Tian to the back seat and sat side by side. The car started, broke through the heavy snow and drove towards Li Wan's house. After a while they arrived at Li Wan's house. Li Wan's family was not bad. They had a detached villa with a front and back garden. The theme building was more than 200 square meters. In front of them was a 3-story restaurant. It was said that they had hired more than a dozen local people to help them. The annual income was more than 1,000,000 Wuxia yuan. From this, it could be seen that the hardworking Wuxia people could establish a foothold anywhere in the world and survive well with their own hands. In the world, the Han people were the most outstanding and hardworking race. They didn't have the arrogance of the white people, nor the laziness of the black people. Li Wan prepared some dishes. In the living room, Zhang Tian and the other two ate and chatted. Li Wan curiously asked Zhang Tian, How can you resist the cold? Were you in the army? You can say that. Zhang Tian hesitated and nodded. He was once the chief consultant of the Dragon Army. He also fought against foreign experts and defeated foreign armies. From this point of view, Zhang Tian was the most authentic soldier. It could even be said that if Zhang Tian wasn't a soldier, there wouldn't be many soldiers in the world. Say, what are you bragging about? With your small body you were in the army? Xianxia's face was full of disdain. He looked at Zhang Tian provocatively and said, "Which army are you from?" "Supreme General Staff Dragon Army." Zhang Tian said indifferently. "You should have some sense when you're bragging." Xianxia suddenly widened his eyes and laughed. "Dragon Army, do you know what kind of people are in there? They are not ordinary people. You can say that they are not human. One of them can fight against 100 soldiers. Any one of Dragon Army's soldiers can flip over a small car. Brother, flip it over for me to see. Even bullets can't kill you. Do you want me to shoot you?" Zhang Tian chuckled and didn't say anything. He didn't take the provocation of such a small character to heart. Fine. Could it be that he really flipped over a small car for him to see? Summer insects can't talk about ice. Frogs at the bottom of a well can't talk about the sea. If you were to talk about the earth, the sun, everything in the universe, the stars and the sea with an ant, would he be able to understand? At this time, Xianxia finally felt that his chance was here. He could regain some of his dignity. "Brother, you've made a fool of yourself, haven't you? You didn't expect me to know so much about the army, right?" He picked up a Winston cigarette and lit it. He took a deep puff and said arrogantly, "Look at my casserole fists. One look and you can tell that I've been trained. How can your punches compare to mine? To be honest, I'm a former Navy officer and a member of the Dragon Army. Have you heard of them?" Zhang Tian could only nod. The Dragon Army is the trump card of the Navy. Xianxia drank a mouthful of vodka to warm himself up and bragged, "At that time I was a hot-blooded youth. I would help anyone I saw. Once when I went home to visit my family, I saw a few gangsters robbing a little girl in an alley. They had guns. But I took them down in an instant with my bare hands. Not only was the girl beautiful, but she was also the daughter of a big company's CEO. She was worth billions. They said that I was good at fighting and wanted me to be their bodyguard. They even wanted to pursue me, but I didn't agree. At that time I still wanted to return to the army and serve the country." Zhang Tian thought to himself, "You read too many online novels. There were only a few female CEOs worth billions in Wuxia. Rich people cherish their lives the most. With this kind of wealth, which one of them didn't go out in a bulletproof car with a group of bodyguards? Why would gangsters rob her? She didn't even have the chance to get close." Chapter 733. Besides, Wuxia's gun control was the strictest in the world. How could ordinary hooligans get a gun? Zhang Tian drink. Xianxia poured a cup of vodka into Zhang Tian's cup. "Forget it, I don't like drinking." Zhang Tian shook his head and refused. He didn't like the taste of vodka. "I can tell you're not a man. You were even a soldier. Which soldier can't drink well?" Xianxia looked at Zhang Tian with disdain, poured himself a drink and continued to brag. "Once, we were on an anti-terrorist mission in the southern border. The three of us had 3 guns and ran out of bullets, but we still defeated a fully armed reinforced battalion with our bare hands. However, Achi was sacrificed that time." At this moment, a trace of sadness appeared on his face and he sighed. "A few of my comrades and I were sending Achi's ashes home, and we happened to see a group of people demolishing Achi's house. The orphan and widow were beaten to the point that they couldn't get up. These bastards are not human." His eyes were red and tears were about to flow out. The hero was bleeding and sacrificing at the front, but the hero's family was being bullied by hooligans at the back. "I couldn't help it. I took off my military cap and kicked the leader of the hooligans 7 or 8 meters away. He vomited blood on the spot and became a vegetable. Sigh, although the leader wanted to protect me and although my motives were understandable, it was still a serious violation of the rules, so I could only retire." He smacked the table proudly and said, "Otherwise I would have been a first lieutenant colonel after working for so long." Zhang Tian felt that what he said was very similar to the plot of an action movie. Besides, if you were really from the Navy, why did you go on an army mission? But he didn't want to expose him, so he didn't want to say anything. At this time, Li Wan changed the topic and asked Zhang Tian. "Zhang Tian, what do you do for a living? Why did you go to Severnaya Zemlya? Do you study science? At this moment she no longer believed that Jiang Tian was a professional soldier. She also thought that Jiang Tian was bragging. Originally, she had a good impression of Jiang Tian and wanted to give Jiang Tian a chance to stay in the family restaurant as a supervisor. Not to mention other things, but it wouldn't be a problem to give him 20 to 30,000 yuan a month. In 2011, it was rare to be able to earn more than 300,000 yuan a year. But now she had given up on this idea. Jiang Tian didn't seem to have any real ability. He was just pretending to be amazing. Therefore she planned to send Jiang Tian away tomorrow. This kind of person was not worth befriending. Let's travel. Could it be that Jiang Tian said he was going to explore the ruins of the immortals? They were even more confused. He bragged about his glorious deeds in the army for a while. Xianxia drank a few cups of wine and became enthusiastic again. He slammed the table and said with great vigor, "However, even though I have retired from the army, as long as my motherland calls for me, I will still go into battle and kill the enemy. Protecting the country and its people is the responsibility of every descendant of the Yellow Emperor." Then he stared at Jiang Tian with a ferocious expression and smiled maliciously. "Also, let me tell you, Li Wan is destined to be my woman. Whoever dares to touch her will die." This was already a full threat. "Yes, I hope you can be happy." But Jiang Tian only smiled faintly and nodded. Seeing this, Xianxia despised Jiang Tian even more. He felt that it was really lonely to be invincible. You can't even withstand a single blow. How could a helpless gigolo compare to me? I am destined to be the son-in-law of the Li family. I will inherit millions of Wuxia's assets. At this moment the door was slammed open by a car. Then a man covered in blood staggered into the room. "Dad." Li Wan saw this and was shocked. "Oh, what's wrong?" Xianxia hurried to support Li Jiangguo and asked in a panic. "Run. You guys run." Li Jiangguo was shot in the shoulder. His face was pale as he screamed, "Black Bear is here. He's here to kill us." They didn't know how to react. Suddenly bang bang bang. After a few gunshots, bullets broke the window and wooden door, leaving a trail of bullet marks on the back wall of the living room. It was a shocking sight. Then a dozen men in camouflage uniforms rushed in. They were all carrying AK-47s and wearing locomotive caps. They looked fierce. They immediately kicked open the doors of each room and rushed in to search. "Black Bear, I have already given you the mining rights under my name. Why do you still want to kill us?" Li Jiangguo saw this and shouted angrily. "Even thieves have morals. Tomahawk is the #1 mafia group in Russia. Don't you have morals? You people in Wuxia have a saying, cut the weeds and dig up the roots. Of course, I will kill your whole family to prevent future trouble." The leader was a man in a black trench coat, a mink fur scarf, leather boots and a full beard. His nose was tall and big, his skin was very white, his body hair was thick and his hair was brownish yellow. He was a typical Russian. Black Bear was like his name. He was more than 2 meters tall. He was as majestic as a black bear, like an NBA guard. Jiang Tian suddenly looked at Xianxia and said, "Xianxia, your chance to protect the country and its people is here. Go, your country is in trouble. How can a hot-blooded soldier like you stand by and watch? Bring out your hot-bloodedness, bring out your skills. They have guns. Didn't you see?" Xianxia was stunned. Then his face turned red as he defended himself. He was indeed bragging just now. But the other party had a few AKs. If he made a move, he would probably be shot into a sieve. These were Tomahawk's men, Russia's largest mafia group. They were even more ruthless than the mafia. They were in cahoots with the police to kill people and steal their goods. No one could stop them. "Hee, didn't you say that when you went home to visit your family, you beat down a gangster with a gun with your bare hands?" Jiang Tian smiled and said, "Didn't you say that when you ran out of bullets, you still beat up an entire battalion with your bare hands? Aren't you a soldier? Aren't you a hot-blooded man? Why don't you go? Hurry up and go." Being mocked by Jiang Tian, Xianxia couldn't hold back his anger anymore. He shouted anxiously, "Do you think I'm stupid? I'm going to die. If you have the guts, go ahead. You don't know who's behind Black Bear. You don't know how powerful Tomahawk is." A moment later, the Li family's servants and cooks who were asleep were dragged out. They were ordered to kneel on the ground and put their hands on their heads. Xianxia only hesitated for a second, but his nose was smashed by the butt of a gun. In the end he could only kneel on the ground with his hands on his head. As for Jiang Tian, they didn't pay attention to Jiang Tian from the beginning to the end. Maybe they thought that Jiang Tian was too handsome and didn't pose a threat. Suddenly, Black Bear's eyes fell on Li Wan. He grinned. Li, your daughter is very beautiful. Wuxia's women are always so petite and cute. I like it. He grabbed Li Wan like an eagle grabbing a chick. In the midst of her pleas and screams, Black Bear tore Li Wan's down jacket and wanted to do something bad to her. At this moment Xianxia's body trembled. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He wanted to go. He liked Li Wan for a few years. How could he watch her be humiliated? But in the end he didn't dare to move. His head was pointed at by a gun. If he moved his head he would be crushed like a watermelon. At this moment all the Li family's servants, cooks and helpers were furious. Li Wan was magnanimous and generous. She treated people gently and generously. These servants and cooks had all received her kindness. But they didn't dare to say anything. Xianxia was right. Black Bear killed people without batting an eyelid. They really couldn't afford to offend him. Ordinary people couldn't afford to offend anyone. Xianxia, save me. After all, Li Wan was a weak woman. Even if she had a strong personality, 2 lines of tears flowed down her face. She struggled and shouted. Wan, don't resist. Don't scream. Otherwise they will really kill you. Don't be afraid. I won't abandon you. Xianxia lowered his head and screamed. From beginning to end, Li Jiangguo closed his eyes and didn't say a word. But he gritted his teeth. As long as he could survive today he would fight Tomahawk to the death. The others' eyes were filled with despair, helplessness and fear. They trembled like birds in a hurricane. At this moment, Jiang Tian slowly stood up and grabbed the vodka bottle on the table. He then looked at Xianxia with disdain. I'll give you 4 words. Coward. Trash. What are you doing? Put down. Li Jiangguo exclaimed. This child had nothing to do with the Li family. His daughter must have met him at the airport. He didn't want Jiang Tian to be killed. Bang. Jiang Tian waved his hand without hesitation. The bottle flew out of his hand and exploded on Black Bear's head. A stream of blood flowed down Black Bear's forehead. Black Bear was motionless and stunned for a moment. He pushed Li Wan aside and looked at Jiang Tian with a grim smile. Wuxia, you're courting death. Jiang Tian. Li Wan was shocked, touched and worried. She didn't expect that Jiang Tian, a stranger she met by chance, would help her. But Jiang Tian's fate was not hard to imagine. Black Bear, don't kill him. I can give you another mining rights. Li Jiangguo was shocked and begged for Jiang Tian. Black Bear would definitely not let him and his daughter go because he was afraid that they would call the police and Li Jiangguo would take revenge. But Black Bear might not kill the others. In other words, Jiang Tian and Xianxia originally had a chance to escape. It's best if Black Bear and the others kill Jiang Tian. This will also prove that my patience is right and won't make me look like a coward. On the other hand, Xianxia was gloating in his heart. Now kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times and I won't kill you. Jiang Tian said very seriously. If they did so, Jiang Tian would really let them go. If Jiang Tian killed someone, it was likely to alarm the Russian police and enter the Russian military's field of vision. In this way, the risk of his actions in Russia would greatly increase. Even if the Russian army couldn't threaten Jiang Tian, it would inevitably cause some trouble. After all, Jiang Tian came to the sword tomb to look for treasures, not to cause trouble. There was no need for this. Jiang Tian wanted to save Li Wan's family. After all, Li Wan was hospitable and her parents were kind people. But it wasn't to the point where Jiang Tian would sacrifice his own interests for them. Chapter 734. Ha, you really have a sense of humor. He Xiong almost laughed himself to death. This was the biggest joke he had heard this year. The other Tomahawk members also laughed and looked at Jiang Tian as if they were looking at a fool. He Xiong is one of the leaders of Tomahawk's Moscow branch. Before this, any Chinese people, even the underworld bosses, would be scared to death when they met him. It was the first time he met someone as reckless as Jiang Tian. Young man, don't fight them head-on. You should run away. Resistance will only lead to death. Even Li Jiangguo shook his head helplessly. Xianxia was gloating and almost laughed out loud. An ordinary person, a kid without even a chicken, dared to challenge He Xiong. Was his brain damaged? Hey Xiong, don't kill him, I beg you. Li Wan could only kowtow and beg for mercy. Just a small fry, not worth mentioning. What is there to be afraid of? Why do you need to run away? Why do you need to kneel to them? Jiang Tian smiled faintly. If it was any other situation, Jiang Tian's performance would definitely make Li Jiangguo bow to Jiang Tian, drink a cup of wine and praise him as a good brother. But now, Li Jiangguo almost vomited blood. This kid is very loyal and courageous, but his brain seems to be lacking. Can't you see that he is holding a gun? They kill him. He Xiong's face was full of ridicule. He looked at Jiang Tian as if he was looking at a fool and then waved his hand. Bang! A tomahawk member took out a long knife and slashed at Jiang Tian without saying a word. I didn't want to kill anyone, but you forced me. Jiang Tian sighed and punched out. Boom! A big hole appeared in the gunman's body. Pieces of internal organs and broken bones flew everywhere and turned into a rain of blood. What? Everyone was stunned as if they had seen a ghost. He killed a living person with a single punch. Shoot! He Xiong was the first to react. Just as he pulled out his pistol, Jiang Tian had already moved. Pop! Jiang Tian's palm slammed down. The black bear started from its head, then its chest, its waist, its legs, and finally its huge body exploded one after another. At this moment, Li Jiangguo was stunned by Jiang Tian's methods. His face turned pale as he exclaimed, "Oh my God, he's a legendary martial arts master." At this moment his heart almost jumped out of his throat, and the hairs on his entire body stood on end. He didn't have the slightest contempt towards Jiang Tian, and he only felt as if he'd seen a true god. At this time the remaining gunmen finally reacted. They raised their guns, aimed at Jiang Tian, and were about to shoot. Die! Jiang Tian bellowed and flicked his finger. Bang! A golden beam of light shot through the air. It was resplendent and drew an irregular arc in the air. Bang bang bang! The heads of all the axes exploded in an instant, and the headless corpses fell to the ground. From beginning to end it took less than 3 seconds. Jiang Tian had killed He Xiong and his henchmen with a single punch, a palm strike and a flick of his finger. By now Xiong Heng had realized that Jiang Tian was a martial arts master. He was shocked, frightened and ashamed. Li Wan also realized that Jiang Tian was not an ordinary man. She was even more grateful and impressed by Jiang Tian. If it weren't for Jiang Tian she would have been killed. Li Jiangguo bowed to Jiang Tian with great respect. "Mr. Jiang, thank you for saving my family. I will never forget your great kindness." Jiang Tian nodded slightly and asked, "You are a martial artist?" "That's right. I have practiced martial arts before, but I have only reached the level of iron body." Li Jiangguo asked curiously, "Are you a transcendent master?" Jiang Tian didn't answer. Even a transcendent grandmaster couldn't withstand one of his attacks. Jiang Tian changed the subject and said, "I know that Tomahawk is a powerful force and will most likely seek revenge. However, I have important matters to attend to, so I can't help you eliminate the root of the problem. Therefore you should avoid them and leave when you should." Li Jiangguo asked, "Savior, where are you going?" Li Wan hurriedly spoke for Jiang Tian. By then, everyone was panicking as they looked at the blood on the ground. Some of them wanted to call the police while others wanted to run. Tomahawk had a lot of men and they would definitely come after them. Li Jiangguo said decisively, "Master Kong, there are no flights to the Severnaya Zemlya. The closer you are to the Arctic Circle the harder it is to travel. But I used to mine in Siberia so I have a lot of experience. Besides, I am a good cook and Xiong Heng is a diligent worker. Master Kong, if you don't mind, why don't we go with you?" "Very well." Jiang Tian pondered for a moment and then nodded. Li Jiangguo didn't hesitate. He asked a few helpers to clean up the blood and gave each of them a large sum of money. He then asked Li Wan and Xiong Heng to pack up the food, water, and survival equipment and loaded them into a pickup truck. Then he left with Jiang Tian, his daughter, and Xiong Heng and drove to the north of Moscow. Li Jiangguo had lived in Russia for more than a decade and had many friends in the mining industry. Along the way he didn't stop in the city or stay in a hotel. However, he could always find Chinese geological and mining sites in the deep mountains and forests. The journey was arduous. The weather was cold, the wind was cold, and the ice blades were cold. Even the engine was frozen. Every time before the journey he had to melt the ice with a flamethrower before the engine could start. Although the conditions were harsh, at least there was meat to eat, wine to drink, and friends to receive them. It was not bad. During the journey, Xianxia tried his best to please Li Wan. However, Li Wan ignored him. She didn't smile from beginning to end. Instead, she was very enthusiastic and worshipful of Jiang Tian. All day long she would ask Jiang Tian all kinds of questions. After the incident with the black bear, she finally saw Xianxia's character. He was simply a good-for-nothing. Xianxia was jealous of Jiang Tian. However, when he thought of Jiang Tian's monstrous means, he couldn't do anything about it. He avoided Jiang Tian several times and secretly persuaded Li Jiangguo to abandon Jiang Tian or hand Jiang Tian over to Tomahawk. He said that it would be troublesome if Tomahawk caught up with Jiang Tian. After all, Tomahawk had someone. However, Li Jiangguo was unmoved. When he persuaded him too much, Li Jiangguo scolded him for being ungrateful. Xianxia was helpless and could only give up. He prayed that Tomahawk would catch up and kill Jiang Tian. This way he would have one less competitor and prove that his previous actions were right and rational. Unfortunately, Li Jiangguo was very clear about Tomahawk's sphere of influence and avoided their pursuit every time. In the end, they traveled thousands of miles and finally reached the Arctic Circle, the northernmost city in Russia. Snow City. This city was very small. There were only tens of thousands of people living in it. The streets and buildings were covered with ice and snow. It was a polar night and the sky was very dim. And one could see the beautiful aurora. It was like a kingdom of ice and snow. Li Jiangguo said respectfully, "Master Kong, Snow City is the northernmost city I've ever been to. I haven't been further north. In this season, there are very few people traveling to Severnaya Zemlya because it's too dangerous. Almost no travel society takes on missions. You have to find a professional team. Otherwise, if you get lost in the Arctic Circle, it's very likely that. But I know someone who travels and adventures to Severnaya Zemlya every year for several years. He's very experienced and basically knows everything. If you don't mind, I can help you contact him." Jiang Tian nodded. The sword tomb of the Immortal of Nine Swords was on an island in Severnaya Zemlya. He had a map. When he reached Severnaya Zemlya, he could get rid of them and find the island he was looking for. Seeing this, Li Jiangguo was overjoyed. He had helped him all the way. Then he hesitated and said, "But Master Kong, this woman has a noble status. Master Kong, try not to provoke her. Otherwise it might cause some unnecessary trouble." Noble status. Jiang Tian wanted to laugh when he heard that. She had a noble status. How could she be more noble than him, the Taichu Celestial Venerable? That was ridiculous. Yes, this woman is the beloved daughter of Berezovsky, the Russian financial and energy oligarch. Her father can be said to be a close comrade of the two Russian emperors. Li Jiangguo said with a trace of respect on his face as he drove. He was a close friend of the current emperor in the KGB. He was also a good friend of the former Emperor Yeltsin. When Yeltsin retired, he was the one who suggested that Yeltsin choose the current emperor of Russia. At the beginning of 2001, the current emperor had attacked the Russian oligarchs in hopes of breaking their monopoly and reviving the Russian economy. The 6 oligarchs, such as the CEO of Yux Oil and the former richest man in Russia, were all arrested and imprisoned on various charges. Only Berezovsky remained standing. Of course, Berezovsky also gave away some of his assets, such as part of the shares of the Siberian Gas Company. He also praised the emperor's new policies in the media he controlled, just like the red-top merchants of the ancient Wuxia. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. He had learned about this in his previous life. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1992, Yeltsin decided to immediately divide the country's assets in the form of 148 million checks and vouchers. However, the privatization of securities did not form a broad class of private owners. Instead, it became a means for the bureaucratic bourgeoisie to buy privatized securities at a low price and turn state-owned assets into private property. A very small number of people saw a business opportunity. They used their connections to borrow funds from the National Bank and tried their best to buy vouchers. Then they used them to gain control of some outstanding companies. Once they gained control, whether they continued to operate the company or sold it, it would be a huge profit. In this way, the oligarchs extended their hands to the oil, metallurgy, media, food, and other industries. They almost completely controlled the lifeline of the Russian economy. The wealth that originally belonged to the people instantly flowed into the pockets of the oligarchs. They built their own empire on the ruins of the Soviet Union. The radical reforms aroused the anger of the people. Before the 1996 election, Yeltsin's position was in danger. In order to seek re-election, Yeltsin met with the CEO of the United Bank, Berezovsky, the CEO of the Bridge Bank and 7 other financial giants in the Kremlin. He reached an agreement with the 7 of them. Then the 7 of them used their own money and media to start propaganda. They used the high-pressure policies of the Soviet Union to awaken the painful memories of the past in people's hearts. In the end, the fear of Stalin's high-pressure rule won over the anger of Yeltsin's incompetence, and Yeltsin was re-elected. At the inauguration ceremony, the 7 oligarchs, led by Berezovsky, sat in the front row. They were full of smiles and drank with Yeltsin. The 7 giants became known to the world. Chapter 735. The oligarchs welcomed the best time in history. With money they could even decide the appointment of the Russian Prime Minister. The oligarchs became the true rulers of Russia. But after the new Russian emperor ascended to the throne, he began to massacre the oligarchs. Under the suppression of the powerful departments, some of the 6 magnates went into exile overseas, some were imprisoned and some died of illness. All of them were reduced to ashes. Only Berezovsky was safe and sound. This person could be called a roly-poly. He dealt with the 2 emperors with ease. His methods were very terrifying. Also, he and the new oligarchs led by Vich regained control of Russia's gas, oil and mining industries. To put it bluntly, it was just a change of emperor. Also, there's another rumor. Li Jianguo lowered his voice and gossiped. There's another reason why the emperor let Berezovsky go. His daughter, Xianxia, also worked in the KGB and was in a relationship with the emperor. She was his lover. As the daughter of a big oligarch and the lover of the emperor, Xianxia had great influence in Russia's upper-class society. She could talk to many tycoons on an equal footing. She had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas with a word. Therefore she was called Princess Xianxia. Soon, Jiang Tian and the others arrived at a vast and luxurious manor in the northern suburbs of Snow City. The heavy snow pressed down on the pine trees and the 4-lane asphalt road was straight. In the manor there were sentries everywhere and it was heavily guarded. Many burly Russian men in black windbreakers patrolled back and forth with submachine guns in their hands. Their eyes were vigilant and covetous. In such a place Xianxia, who always liked to brag, was cowering like a quail, not daring to say a word. "Hey Paul, is my old friend Princess Xianxia here?" It was not Li Jianguo's first time here. He was very familiar with the guard leaders and greeted them warmly. "She's hunting and will be back soon. The princess is looking forward to the Maotai wine you brought. If you don't bring it, you'll be surrounded by bears." Paul shrugged his shoulders and smirked. He patted Li Jianguo's shoulder and led the group to a living room. There was a leather sofa imported from Italy, exquisite porcelain, fragrant coffee, and a silent but polite old servant. Pine branches were burning in the fully enclosed fireplace, and there were many brown bear and tiger specimens hanging on the wall. There were also some oil paintings by famous artists. Every detail of the manor showed its deep heritage. A moment later, an army green SUV drove into the yard. The legendary Princess Xianxia had arrived late. Very young. Jiang Tian sighed inwardly. This woman was in her early 20s and was much taller than the average Asian woman. She was nearly 1.8 meters tall and wore a sapphire blue suede hunting suit, brown riding pants, high riding boots and a black exquisite helmet. She looked like a female hunter, valiant and murderous. However, he raised his chin slightly, looking very arrogant. "Li, my old friend, I didn't expect you to want to go to Severnaya Zemlya. That place is very dangerous." She glanced at them and said disdainfully, "You're courting death." "Princess Xianxia. It's Mr. Jiang." Li Jianguo hurriedly stood up and bowed deeply, wanting to introduce Jiang Tian to Xianxia. "Let's not talk about this for now." Xianxia frowned in disgust. She arrogantly and coldly said, "I heard that you killed Black Bear from Tomahawk and more than a dozen people?" Li Jianguo's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly explained. "Miss Xianxia, Black Bear forcefully bought my minerals at an unfair price. I endured the humiliation and agreed, but they still want to kill me. I can't let them take advantage of me. Li, you killed my brother and I've been chasing you. But you're very cunning. You don't stay in the city and slip through my fingers a few times. At this moment a person suddenly walked in. This person was more than 2 meters tall and was burly like a small mountain. He gave off a strong psychological pressure. He laughed sinisterly. But you don't know. Xianxia is also my friend. Using the old Wuxia saying, there's a path to heaven but you don't take it. There's no door to hell but you barge in. He approached step by step, the marble floor cracking under his footsteps. He laughed sinisterly. His every move was filled with power and his gaze was as sharp as a vicious wolf's. Seeing this, Xianxia was so frightened that his legs trembled and his face turned pale. If he stepped on a person they would probably break bones and tear tendons. No, they would be stomped into a pile of meat paste. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat. This person's physical body had awakened. Although it wasn't complete, his strength was comparable to a martial arts grandmaster. Bill, one of the 4 generals of Tomahawk, the person in charge of the Moscow branch. Xianxia crossed her arms, raised her chin slightly and said coldly. Former Kerberg Level 8 agent, member of the Winter Soldier Reserve Force. He once killed a Chinese martial arts master. Li, you are all my friends. I can't side with anyone. If you defeat Bill they will repay you for the mining rights. From then on you and Tomahawk will be written off. He once killed a martial arts master. We are no match for him. Cold sweat broke out on Li Jiangwo's forehead as he scanned the outside. His heart suddenly sank. There were hundreds of burly men in camouflage uniforms gathered outside. Their eyes were fierce and they were armed with live ammunition. There were even heavy machine guns and shoulder-fired rockets. They were smoking and chatting with Paul and Xianxia's guards. They were Tomahawk's men. There was no way to escape in this situation. Li Wan was so scared that her face turned pale and her body trembled. He's Bill. Xianxia had heard of Bill before and exclaimed. In Moscow Bill was a legend, a myth, a monster and a demon. It was said that he could withstand machine gun fire and kill people in a hail of bullets. It was said that he would tear people alive and even eat their hearts. It was said that he was so strong that he could flip a small car over with his bare hands. At this moment Xianxia could no longer bear the psychological pressure. His emotions exploded as he shouted at Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian, you can call me trash, you can call me a coward, but so what? Look at the formation outside. Are they something you can afford to offend? Grenades. Heavy machine guns. Rockets. Look at Bill's strength. He can crush marble with one step. Do you understand the principle of enduring for a while? It turns out that we won't necessarily die. Spending a little more money can settle this. But now that you've killed someone they're chasing after you. If they don't give up, let's see how you're going to deal with this. Jiang Tian, you're just an ordinary person. So what if you know Kung Fu? Look at the situation now. Can you handle it? We're going to die because of you. He pushed Jiang Tian and shouted hysterically, he's the one who killed us. We didn't fight back. It's him. Xianxia. Li Jiangguo was extremely disappointed in him. He slapped him in the face and shouted angrily. Do you think you can escape by begging for mercy? You're wrong. They'll kill you all. It's useless to beg for mercy in front of fierce wolves and tigers. Because he wants to eat you. It's his instinct to eat you. Xianxia fell to the ground, tears and snot running down his face. He shouted crazily, I didn't fight back. Why do you want to kill me? Kill him. Kill Jiang Tian. He's the culprit. Former KGB agent. Jiang Tian was calm. He took a step forward and said calmly, Winter Soldier Reserve member? What's so great about that? He's just a piece of trash that I can kill with one slap. Seeing this, even Li Jiangguo felt that Jiang Tian was too arrogant and overconfident, or even overestimating his own abilities. Even if you're good at fighting, can you beat a former KGB agent? Can someone who can enter the KGB in the Winter Soldier Reserve be an ordinary person? Bill was really famous in Russia. He was also very powerful and scary. He had killed a martial arts master before. There were even a lot of dark fairy tales and legends around him. He could even stop children from crying at night. Otherwise, how could he dominate the entire Moscow and make such a name for himself? Even the Italian mafia had to be wary of him. Even Li Wan, who worshipped Jiang Tian and treated him like a god, did not have much confidence in Jiang Tian. Bill was the legendary KGB agent and Winter Soldier. He was an existence that only appeared in action movies. Ordinary people in real life were no match for him. At this moment Xianxia almost laughed out loud. At this juncture, Jiang Tian still dared to boast so shamelessly. But great. That's great. Jiang Tian recklessly stood up and attracted Bill's firepower. Maybe Bill would forget about me. The more tragic Jiang Tian's death was, the more it would prove that my forbearance was right and that I was very wise. Who knows, maybe Li Wan would change her mind about him. And Faya looked at Jiang Tian with a hint of mockery in her eyes. This Wuxia kid is courting death. At this moment, Jiang Tian had an ordinary appearance in the mortal world. He was handsome and delicate and his fingers were even more translucent than a girl's. Not to mention Bill, he was even weaker than Li Jiangguo. Go to hell. Bang. Bill was indeed a former KGB elite. He knew that even a lion would use all its strength to catch a rabbit. Even though he felt that Jiang Tian was weak, he still did not show any mercy. He threw a punch and it was like a cannonball flying across the sky. The air exploded and the surrounding furniture was blown away by the wind. Unfortunately, Jiang Tian could even defeat the Wolf King Alexander, let alone an ordinary physical awakened. How could he be a match for him? Get lost. Jiang Tian just waved his hand casually. Boom. Jiang Tian's translucent jade-like hand was like the giant palm of a mighty miracle god, containing a tremendous amount of strange power. On the contrary, the burly Bill, who looked like a brown bear, was like a piece of paper in front of Jiang Tian, unable to withstand a single blow. The huge and majestic body that could withstand the barrage of a machine gun exploded in an instant, turning into a sky full of sparkling and translucent blood rain, sprinkling down in a flurry. Hiss. Seeing this scene, whether it was in Faya, the Tomahawks, or the Manor's bodyguards, they all gasped. No one expected that the ordinary-looking Jiang Tian could kill Bill with one slap. After all, Bill was once a reserve member of the Winter Soldier Organization. He was unparalleled in strength. Who else? Let's go together. With his hands behind his back, Jiang Tian calmly glanced at Faya and the other Tomahawks. The whole place was dead silent. No one dared to say a word. Chapter 736. Anfia's face turned pale. Then a silver-haired old man behind her leaned over and whispered something into her ear. Anfia gave Jiang Tian a knowing look and said with a smile, "Fine, you win. I will keep my promise." With Jiang Tian's sharp divine sense, he naturally sensed that the old man was speaking to Anfia. Miss Anfia, this man must be a martial artist from Wuxia. He might even be a transcendent master. Don't mess with him. Those who could see Jiang Tian's power were not ordinary people. Jiang Tian noticed that the old man had used some kind of strange Dharma spells. He must be a Caucasian shaman who was as powerful as a Dharma master from Wuxia. However, Jiang Tian didn't care about such a small fry. If the old man dared to provoke him, he would kill him with a slap. Anfia looked at Jiang Tian and then walked out of the door. She called a few tomahawks over and said, "Bill failed. Bill failed. Li is my friend, so you have to fulfill your promise and give me face. Give him back his mining rights. Also, don't harass him in the future. Otherwise, my family will not sit back and do nothing." Yes, Miss Anfia. Anfia was very authoritative, so the tomahawks didn't dare to disobey her. Someone prepared a contract and brought it to Jiang Tian. "Mr. Li, please forgive us for offending you in the past. Russians were a nation of warriors who worshipped the strong. Now that they had seen Jiang Tian's strength, the battle axes had a whole new level of respect for Jiang Tian. They bowed deeply and their respect for Li Jiangguo increased. Li Jiangguo took the contract and cast a grateful look at Jiang Tian. He heaved a sigh of relief. Anfia was very influential in Russia. She could drink and chat with the emperor. With her and Jiang Tian's power, the tomahawks didn't dare to cause any trouble. Xianxia also approached Jiang Tian with a fawning look on his face. He knelt down and kowtowed to Jiang Tian. "Mr. Jiang, I'm convinced. I didn't expect you to be an expert. You're too domineering. It is my honor to be your friend." "Since when am I your friend?" Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and pointed at Xianxia. "This person has nothing to do with me. I won't protect him." "Mr. Jiang, we won't stand on ceremony then. Actually, we also need to kill someone to report to the headquarters." "Thank you, Mr. Jiang." The tomahawks were about to leave, but at this moment, they suddenly stopped and smiled maliciously at Xianxia. One of them pulled out a pistol and pointed it at the back of Xianxia's head. Zhang Tian, spare my life. Help me say something, I know I was wrong. I really... Xianxia was scared out of his wits and his tears and mucus flowed freely. He kowtowed like he was pounding garlic and even his forehead was bleeding profusely. But his begging came to an abrupt end. The tomahawk unceremoniously opened fire and blew up Xianxia's head. Xianxia fell to the ground, his brain matter splattered all over the floor. Li Wan was so scared that she trembled and screamed. Only then did she realize Zhang Tian's decisiveness and ruthlessness. Li Jiangguo just shook his head helplessly, but he didn't try to persuade Zhang Tian at all. It wasn't that he didn't dare to persuade him but that he didn't want to. He felt that Xianxia wasn't worth him saying anything. Zhang Tian had saved Xianxia's life, but Xianxia even wanted to hand Zhang Tian over to Tomahawk. That was simply ungrateful. Today when things came to a head he pushed Zhang Tian out to take the bullet and even insulted Zhang Tian. Fear in the face of death was understandable, but such a cowardly person didn't deserve sympathy. Mr. Jiang, Mr. Li, you are qualified to explore Severnaya Zemlya with me. Xianxia brought over 2 glasses of red wine and smiled. In fact, other than wanting to end the feud between Mr. Li and Tomahawk, I also want to test your skills. To be honest, the place I'm going to is very dangerous. Now congratulations, you've passed the test. Mr. Jiang, there's no need for me to go to Severnaya Zemlya. Li Jiangguo hesitated and smiled bitterly. Xianxia and Zhang Tian weren't ordinary people. Li Jiangguo felt a little uneasy about going to Severnaya Zemlya together. Besides, although he wanted to repay Zhang Tian by sending him off, he was actually fleeing. Now that the crisis was over, he could go back. Zhang Tian saw through him and smiled. Mr. Li, you'll have to part in the end. I'm very touched that you've sent me here. Okay, Master Kong, then I'll go back. You must be careful, I have a feeling that she's not that simple. Li Jiangguo looked at Xianxia meaningfully and spoke in Chinese. Don't worry. Zhang Tian comforted. In Russia not many people can hurt me. You can go back. Li Jiangguo drove away with his daughter. The 2 of them were in a complicated mood. Neither of them spoke. After they had gone far, Li Wan was still looking back at the manor. Daughter, don't look anymore. It's useless. He's not the same as us. Li Jiangguo smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yeah, he's too strong. I hope he'll be safe on this trip. Li Wan lowered her eyes and sighed bitterly. That night, Zhang Tian rested in a guest room in the manor and meditated silently. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Come in. Zhang Tian scanned with his divine sense. Xianxia was wearing black silk pajamas and holding a glass of red wine. She was standing outside the door with a drunken look. Mr. Jiang, you haven't paid for the room or the travel expenses. Don't you think you need to pay something? Xianxia's face was flushed. Her skin was snow white and her figure was extremely hot. The bow on her shoulder seemed to be tempting him to untie it. Zhang Tian said indifferently, How much? I'll give it to you. I'm afraid you can't afford what I want. Xianxia sat down beside Zhang Tian and wrapped her snow-white arms around his shoulders as she spoke in a tender voice. How much? Give me a price. Zhang Tian frowned. Xianxia's luscious lips moved to Zhang Tian's ear and whispered, Accompany me for 1 night or the rest of your life. It's your choice. I'm fine with either. Zhang Tian smiled bitterly and shook his head. Miss Xianxia, thank you for your kindness. Unfortunately, I have a wife and we have a very good relationship. Then do you mind having another hot and passionate lover? Xianxia pulled Zhang Tian's arm coquettishly and pressed her full breasts against him, giving him a very subtle feeling. I'm sorry, please leave. If you insist, I can stay in a hotel outside. Zhang Tian said firmly. Russian girls are so valiant, to actually covet my beauty in such a straightforward manner. Looks like I'll have to make myself uglier next time I come out. I'll change into Little Wei's appearance. He's ordinary and ugly. Alright, Mr. Jiang. We'll set off tomorrow. We'll calculate the travel expenses when we're done. Xianxia's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. She slammed the door and left with a glass of wine. She was different from Paris. She was promiscuous and liked to hook up with men. She originally thought that Zhang Tian would gladly endure hardships since she came from a good family and was beautiful. She didn't expect Zhang Tian to not give her any face. The next morning, A few more VIPs arrived by helicopter. They looked like they were either rich or powerful. From their conversation, Jiang Tian realized that they all knew each other. They were all from large Russian tycoons or powerful families. For this expedition, Xianxia had prepared a Mi-26 heavy-duty transport helicopter. It could carry up to 20 tons and was one of the most powerful transport helicopters in the world. Of course, it was expensive. However, Xianxia had 7 or 8 helicopters like this. It was obvious that Xianxia's family was wealthy. Everyone, let's set off. The leader was a burly man in combat uniform. His nickname was Tank. He was fully armed and capable. According to the introduction, he used to be a Special Forces member of Russia's Alpha anti-terrorist unit. After retiring, he specialized in being an expedition guide in extreme areas and served the nobles. He was very experienced and had been to Severnaya Zemlya many times. Xianxia and the others also seemed to frequently explore Severnaya Zemlya. They had all kinds of advanced equipment. There were all kinds of protective clothing, ski equipment, tents, sleeping bags, compressed food, snowproof glasses, windproof night vision goggles, and so on. Only Jiang Tian didn't bring any equipment. Moreover, he wore very thin clothes. It was obvious that he was a layman. Originally, everyone had finished their preparations and was about to set off. But at this moment, a tall young man pointed at Jiang Tian and said disdainfully, "Princess Xianxia, why do you have to bring this Wuxia guy? He doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken and will delay our operation." Xianxia smiled and said, "Xiao, this Mr. Jiang from Wuxia is an expert. He once defeated Tomahawk's Bill. I think he will be of help." Xiao was the son of a mining oligarch in Russia. His wealth was about the same as Xianxia's family. Moreover, he had always been pursuing Xianxia. Xianxia didn't like him very much, but she wouldn't offend Jiang Tian because of him. She had a feeling that she couldn't understand Jiang Tian. He is indeed a martial arts expert. He should be from a martial arts family in Wuxia. The old servant standing behind Xianxia, Connolly, also explained with a smile. Connolly was very old. His white hair was curly and his white beard was neatly trimmed. His figure was tall and straight and his aura was strict. His strength was actually a bit stronger than Tomahawk's Bill and Black Bear. The tank leader and many members of the defense team looked at him with reverence and worship. What? He defeated Bill? The rich young masters present all exclaimed in surprise. Bill was famous in Russia. He was one of the top experts in Tomahawk. It was said that he once served in the Winter Army. However, this handsome Wuxia kid had actually defeated him. Only Xiao snorted in disdain and disdain. Others didn't know, but he was a descendant of the Wolf King Alexander. Defeating Bill could frighten others, but in his eyes, it wasn't worth mentioning. Okay, I respect Princess Xianxia's opinion. Xiao didn't argue. He raised his hand and pointed at Jiang Tian. Wuxia kid, it's no problem to bring you along, but don't be a burden to us. You have to bring dry food, oxygen bags and protective clothing. Jiang Tian turned to look at Xiao. His eyes were gloomy as he said indifferently, "Is it your turn to tell me what to do?" Chapter 737. In the eyes of others, Jiang Tian's attitude was lukewarm and indifferent. But to Xiao, it was no different from a muffled clap of thunder ringing in his ears. Moreover, an extremely horrifying scene appeared before his eyes. On an ancient battlefield where corpses were piled up like mountains and blood flowed like rivers, Jiang Tian stood proudly with a height of 300 meters. His feet were stepping on piles of white bones, and his pair of eyes were like 2 divine lamps. His cold gaze was 100 meters long, sweeping through the myriad of worlds and overlooking all living things. Around him, huge demon heads were sent flying, evil dragons with their guts pierced through fell to the ground, and distant stars exploded like fireworks. Xiao suddenly felt a sharp, baleful aura forcefully cut open his sturdy heart. All kinds of violent, tragic, savage, and terrifying emotions were forcibly poured into his heart, causing it to suddenly stop beating and making it difficult for him to breathe. At this moment, Xiao was scared out of his wits. His hair stood on end and cold sweat poured out of his body. He couldn't help but tremble and his divine soul almost shattered. Thump, 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 thump. Xiao took 5 or 6 steps back and staggered to the ground. He screamed, "Who are you? Let me go." "Xiao, what's wrong with you?" Several young brothers came forward to support Xian with strange expressions. Xian was not only good at fighting but also extremely daring. He once went alone to the primeval forest of the Siberian plateau to hunt brown bears and dire wolves. He didn't bring any supplies and survived for 3 months, even gaining a few pounds. But now he was so scared that he lost his composure. "Humph, behave yourself or I'll kill you." Jiang Tian's indifferent and cold voice was only heard by Xian alone. As the voice sounded, the fantasy before Xian's eyes disappeared and he returned to reality. "It's nothing." Xian waved his hands at his companions. His face was pale as he looked at Jiang Tian with lingering fear. Then he rushed into the M26 transport plane and didn't dare to say another word. The young masters of the prestigious families looked at each other, baffled. Then they clustered around Xianxia and boarded the helicopter. The old servant behind Xianxia, Connolly, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. He leaned forward and whispered into Xianxia's ear. "Maybe he's using Wuxia's illusion technique." Xiao En, who has werewolf blood, was so scared that he almost cried. "Is this the reason why he's so confident in ignoring my pursuit? The journey to the island of death this time is long. I will have the chance to test your background." On the other hand, Princess Anfea was sitting in the cabin, sipping her hot coffee as she looked at Jiang Tian, who was sitting far away from them, with a trace of embarrassment in her eyes. Everyone boarded the plane one after another. Other than Anfea, Xian, and the other corporate science, they also brought along more than 10 supporting members. Jiang Tian noticed that they were not ordinary soldiers. Many of them even had werewolf blood or were Caucasian shamans or priests. They all had a certain level of magical power. It was just that they were wearing modern combat uniforms, which made people mistakenly think that they were ordinary soldiers. A large wooden box in the cabin was filled with a large amount of firearms. There were heavy machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers, and even laser weapons that conventional troops would not be equipped with. After the helicopter took off and flew for a while, the atmosphere in the cabin gradually became lively. Xiao En seemed to think that the illusion that appeared when he looked into Jiang Tian's eyes was a hallucination that happened when he drank too much last night, and his mind relaxed. However, he did not dare to harass Jiang Tian again. This was not their first time exploring the Northern Isles, and they began to share the fun of exploring the Northern Isles. Aurora, polar bears, thick-billed sea crows, warm wooden houses, and mellow vodka. At first, their conversation was unable to attract Jiang Tian's attention. It was all about the fun of the trip. But suddenly, one of the young masters excitedly slapped his thigh and laughed. "We always get the most out of the sword's grave. Last time I picked up an antique jade pendant and gave it to my grandfather. My grandfather originally had cancer, but he recovered in 3 months. It was simply amazing." The sword's grave, according to Chinese, was naturally the sword tomb. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this group of people also went to the Northern Isles for the sword tomb? No wonder Anfea had repeatedly emphasized that this expedition was very dangerous. That was the place where the immortals had fallen. Of course, there would be some formations and restrictions. If ordinary people approached, wouldn't they die miserably? "Yes, do you still remember the short sword I picked up last time? It could easily cut through Kevlar bulletproof vests. I asked Wuxia's antique experts to appraise it. They said that it was a sword from the Warring States period and was worth at least 5 million euros. Another young master said with a smile of exultation. "I picked up a helmet." Another young master also began to show off excitedly. "We must go to the sword's grave." Anfea frowned. "But everyone must be very careful there. After all, we have experienced a risk. 8 bodyguards have died." At the mention of this, everyone's expression changed. The atmosphere was solemn and there was some fear in their eyes. "That's right. What is that thing? It looked like a black gas, but it could swallow a living person." One of the young masters swallowed his saliva and said, "I think it was an aurora. It floated around and changed rapidly." Another young master interrupted. "It's not an aurora. There has never been a black aurora." Another young master shook his head and said with a fearful expression, "Besides, there has never been an aurora swallowing a living person. I've consulted a few meteorologists in my family's company. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid." At this moment, Connolly smiled and said, "This time, we have made ample preparations and are equipped with a large number of firearms." he said confidently. Besides, our team members are also extraordinary. They are all from my powerful family. Yes, Mr. Connolly is very powerful. I once saw him break a cannonball with one punch, but he himself was unharmed. And Fia also looked at this old servant who had guarded her for more than 10 years with admiration. And Fia was not very clear about Connolly's identity. But even her father was very respectful to him, saying that he was of noble status and had an extraordinary background. Connolly only stayed by Fia's side because he was indebted to her family. Otherwise, he would not have been able to afford to hire her. Mr. Connolly is actually so powerful. With Connolly and the support team, our trip will be very safe. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Connolly in awe before they began to flatter him. At this moment, Zhang Tian suddenly said indifferently, "Mr. Connolly, don't go to the sword tomb. Mr. Connolly, it's best that you don't go to the sword catacomb. It's very dangerous there, more dangerous than any previous adventure." "You also know about the sword tomb?" Connolly's expression was strange and he immediately became vigilant. He originally thought that Zhang Tian did not know anything about it, but his cultivation was strong, so he brought along Zhang Tian. If there was any danger, he could use Zhang Tian as a meat shield to facilitate his escape. But he did not expect that Zhang Tian actually knew about the sword tomb. Then it was very likely that Zhang Tian would fight for the treasures that originally belonged to them. Zhang Tian smiled faintly and did not comment. He had only met Fia and the others by chance, and his impression of them was only essay. "Mr. Jiang, you advised us not to go to the sword tomb. What about you?" Connolly's eyes were sharp as he probed. "Of course I'm going," Zhang Tian said indifferently. "It's best if you send me to the sword tomb and leave on your own. Otherwise you will die an unnatural death." Zhang Tian said this for a reason, and it was also out of goodwill. The sword tomb opened once every 11 years. In their previous explorations, the restrictions had not been opened. To put it bluntly, they had only circled around the sword tomb. Now that the restrictions were opened, many formless killing formations would also be activated, and it would be 10 times more dangerous than before. One had to know that cultivators were always proud and arrogant. They even looked down on the world with disdain. They regarded life as nothing more than grass and used all living beings as chess pieces. The inheritances that they left behind were not to be passed down lightly, and only those who are virtuous and talented. They would set up very dangerous restrictions and formations. Only the powerful cultivators who could break the restrictions could obtain the inheritances and inheritances. Ordinary people would be courting death if they went there. Connolly smiled coldly when he heard that. "Mr. Jiang, I know you're quite capable, but you're underestimating us too much. You are just a transcendent state cultivator or even an internal force cultivator. You don't have the experience of exploring the sword catacomb and know nothing about it. Who gave you the courage to say such things? Do you think that you can do it if we can't?" "That's right, I think so. If you go, you will only be cannon fodder." Zhang Tian smiled faintly. "Mr. Jiang, you are so funny." Connolly was already a little annoyed. "How do you know that I am a Caucasian shaman? How do you know that I am powerful and extraordinary?" However, he couldn't expose his identity as a shaman. He didn't mention it but said disdainfully, "Mr. Jiang, are you trying to scare us away so that you can enjoy the treasures of the sword tomb alone? You are so cunning and selfish. You should know that we are the ones who took you to Severnaya Zemlya. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to touch the door of the sword tomb. You can say that we are your benefactors. But now you actually... you've really disappointed me." Zhang Tian shook his head and closed his eyes without saying a word. Some people were always full of themselves and took other people's kindness for granted. Some people were so arrogant that they only realized their insignificance and weakness after suffering a loss. Seeing that Zhang Tian didn't speak, Xiao En thought that Connolly could intimidate Zhang Tian. "Mr. Jiang, you didn't even bring the necessary equipment for an adventure. If we don't let you share our fire seed and food, I am afraid that you will starve to death in less than 3 days. When the time comes, you'll be crying." The other young masters were also very unhappy with Zhang Tian and echoed, "Alright, let's stop talking. Since we are going together, we are friends or even comrades. I hope that everyone can work together and help each other." Seeing Zhang Tian's cold eyes, Anfia hurriedly tried to persuade him. But in fact she also despised Zhang Tian a little at this time. Although Anfia was dissolute and had a messy private life, she had one good point. She was hot-blooded, righteous, and forthright. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to become the spiritual leader of so many Russian young masters and organize such a dangerous adventure. What she hated the most were those who were petty, selfish, and didn't have team spirit. At this time, Anfia had clearly regarded Zhang Tian as such a person. She was very disappointed and despised Zhang Tian. She almost scolded Zhang Tian as shameless. Chapter 738. After this conversation, Zhang Tian's relationship with Anfia's group was even worse. In the end, the two sides didn't communicate at all. Anfia's group drank vodka, ate cheese, smoked cigars, and talked cheerfully. They ignored Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian was also happy to have some peace and quiet. But where did Zhang Qianlei go? Zhang Tian frowned and thought to himself. Along the way, he tried to contact Zhang Qianlei with the satellite phone several times, but he didn't get a response. This made Zhang Tian worried that Zhang Qianlei might be in danger. Guys, we've arrived at Severnaya Zemlya. Let's fly directly to the silent island where the Graveyard of Swords is located. After the helicopter flew for a few hours, the bearded pilot shouted. We're finally here. The Graveyard of Swords, we're here. Treasures. There are countless treasures waiting for us. Everyone looked out through the porthole, their eyes filled with excitement and anticipation as they rubbed their palms. As the snow is too thick. We don't know the actual terrain under the snow, so we can't land on the ground. We might fall into the snow and become specimens. The bearded pilot shouted at the top of his voice. So, guys, you can only parachute. But I don't think this will be a challenge for the brave warriors, right? Of course. Sean excitedly took out parachutes and distributed them. He said nonchalantly, we all love extreme sports and have experience in parachuting. He gave one to everyone except for Zhang Tian. Finally, he looked at Zhang Tian and smiled. Sorry, we don't have enough parachutes. You'd better return with them or just jump. He opened the hatch with a click. A gust of cold wind mixed with snowflakes poured in, making everyone's breathing stagnate. Xiaowen's voice was full of mockery and ridicule. After all, the snow here is very thick. It's like a cushion. You shouldn't be hurt. In fact, there were plenty of parachutes in the cabin. However, Sean deliberately made things difficult for Zhang Tian. Either Zhang Tian had no choice but to return, so there would be one less competitor. Either Zhang Tian would recklessly jump down and that would only be a dead end. Right now, the helicopter was at least a few hundred meters above the ground. Even with the ice and snow as a buffer, there was no chance of survival if he jumped down. Xiaowen, don't joke about this. Anfia wanted to stop him but was stopped by Connolly. Mr. Jiang is a true hero and brave man. This small challenge is no problem at all. Connolly was also extremely unhappy with Zhang Tian. At this moment he wanted to checkmate Zhang Tian. He believed that Zhang Tian would not give up the opportunity to explore the sword tomb, but he did not dare to jump down directly. In that case he could only beg them for mercy. This way he could take the opportunity to humiliate Zhang Tian. Mr. Jiang, are you still not going to jump? I've heard that Wuxia's cultivators are very powerful. They shouldn't be afraid. At this time Xiaowen actually took out his pistol and waved it. The threat was clear as day. It was as if he would kill him if he didn't jump. Yes. Everyone goodbye. Unexpectedly, Zhang Tian's expression did not change at all. He stepped into the air and jumped down from the cabin door. It's over. Anfia's expression changed drastically as she screamed. She did not expect Zhang Tian to jump down without a care for his life. Everyone was also dumbfounded. Oh no, he's dead. He actually jumped down. It's at least 600 meters above sea level. Someone whispered. It's 1,000 meters. The pilot said dryly. Slap. Anfia slapped Xiao En and said angrily, You're trying to murder him. Xiao En covered his face and explained, I didn't force him. He jumped on his own. Is it my fault? It's okay. This is no man's land. No one will care about the life and death of a Chinese. Connolly sneered. Miss Anfia, this Mr. Zhang's background is unknown. He might become our competitor. It's best if he dies. Anfia had mixed feelings. As a former member of the KGB and the eldest daughter of her family, she was not a kind person. Whether it was for the interests of the country or her family's business interests, She had killed more people than she could count with 2 hands. But at this moment she still felt a little uncomfortable. After all, she had a good impression of Zhang Tian. But it was too late to say anything now. Anfia quickly put Zhang Tian to the back of her mind and parachuted down with everyone, landing on Silent Island. This island, looking from the south to the north, looked like a long and narrow shoe. It was about 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. It was not small and covered in ice and snow. Originally it had a Russian name. But since a few years ago someone had discovered many ruins here and found a piece of land with the words, Sword Tomb carved on it, this place was called Silent Island, or Sword Tomb Island. 10 minutes later parachutes floated down and Anfia and the others landed on the ground. At this moment they were at the heel position. Because the North Pole had heavy snowstorms in winter, it was not safe for the helicopter to fly further north. And the sword tomb should be at the heel position. It was still about 40 to 50 kilometers north of them, so they still needed to trek for a while. After everyone landed, they used satellite phones to contact each other. 7 or 8 young masters and a dozen guards landed safely. Fuck. At this moment Sean cursed over the walkie-talkie. My food fell into the sea. In order to safely parachute down, their weapons and food were placed in 2 large boxes and landed with parachutes. After the food landed, everyone carried a bag. But the wind here was too strong and it was not suitable for parachuting. They had landed safely with hundreds of parachuting experience, but they did not expect their food to be blown into the sea. Now they only had a small amount of food on them which could last about 3 days. If we reduce our food intake it will be enough. Anfia thought for a moment and said in a low voice. Everyone gathered together and headed towards the north. The Sword Tomb Island was a barren land. There was thick snow and ice everywhere and the snow could reach up to their knees when they stepped on it. Moreover, even monkey-beaked seabirds and polar bears were rare here. It would be difficult for them to even hunt some game. There was already a polar night here and there was no distinction between day and night. They had trekked for 5 or 6 hours and had only traveled about 10 kilometers. Other than Connolly, who was still okay, everyone was so hungry that their chests were sticking to their stomachs. They were so tired that they were panting. At this moment they suddenly smelled a tempting meat fragrance. Sean sniffed and drooled. Someone's barbecuing meat. I'm dying. Yes. Someone's barbecuing meat. Find him. Everyone was very excited. After searching for a while they finally saw a scene that made them dumbfounded. They saw Zhang Tian sitting cross-legged on a patch of snow with a grill in front of him. He was happily roasting a plump hare. The hare was sprinkled with cumin, salt and honey. It had already been roasted to a golden brown color. The aroma permeated the air and the charcoal fire was red. Hot oil sizzled out, creating small flames on the charcoal fire. It was very tempting. Zhang Tian, you're not dead. And Fia was overjoyed. What's his cultivation level? He's not dead. Connolly's face showed a hint of suspicion and wariness. Tank and the other guards also looked serious. Zhang, your cooking is really good. Can you lend us half of it? Sean ran forward and reached out to take it. Get lost. Zhang Tianxin waved his hand, causing him to stumble backwards. You can't finish it anyway. What's wrong with giving us some? How can you be so stingy? Sean said angrily. I can feed it to the dogs if I can't finish it, but I won't give it to you. Zhang Tian sneered. Sean had forced him to jump off the plane because Zhang Tian was powerful. If he was a normal person he would have died. Now he was trying to take advantage of him again. How shameless. Sean was so angry that his face turned red. His hand reached for the pistol at his waist, but when he saw Anfia beside him he could only suppress his anger and mock. If you didn't bring a tent or warm clothes. There will be a time when you beg us. With that he turned around angrily. Zhang Tian, how did you land safely just now? Anfia asked curiously. Zhang Tianli ignored all of them and just ate the roasted rabbit with relish. What's there to be arrogant about? Is that so great? Anfia had felt a little guilty toward Zhang Tian, but when she saw that he was ignoring her she couldn't help but feel a little angry. She was proud of her beauty and she was the daughter of a rich oligarch. Even the Russian emperor doted on her. After eating the hare he continued to walk forward with a swagger. Anfia's group followed behind him. This kid is too annoying. Why don't we kill him? Sean said viciously to Connolly as he stared at Zhang Tian's back. Wait. Connolly frowned and thought hard. He was eating a roasted rabbit just now. It wasn't a polar bear, seal, or seabird. This is too strange. It was indeed a roasted rabbit. I saw the skin of a roasted rabbit next to him. It was gray. The tank guide frowned and said, "But how could there be a roasted rabbit in the Arctic Circle? He must have brought it here." But Connolly's clothes were thin and he didn't have a bag. He also didn't have a place to bring a roasted rabbit. It's very strange. Yes, it's very strange. There's no way to explain it. Xian also noticed the abnormality and scratched his head. Connolly quickly walked over to Xianxia and told her his analysis and suspicions. Then his eyes flashed with greed. He was so excited that his hands were slightly trembling as he said in a deep voice, "That's right. It's rumored that the cultivation world of Wuxia has a spatial artifact. Can fold space. Maybe he's using this kind of thing. Let's find a suitable opportunity to kill him and steal his treasure." Chapter 739. Connolly's eyes were greedy as he eagerly said, "If our research team can understand the secret of space control and mass-produce this kind of treasure, we will be rich. This is an epoch-making scientific advancement. It can even be called a revolution." Xianxia pondered for a moment, but still shook her head and said, "Uncle Connolly, I have always respected your opinion, but this time I don't agree." "Why?" Connolly asked puzzledly. "Could it be that Princess Xianxia likes him? It's not worth it. He has some ability, but he is just an ordinary person." "How is that possible? I, Xianxia, do not belong to any man, I only belong to myself." Xianxia's face turned red as she defended herself. "I knew it, Xianxia would not like him. Only someone like the Russian Emperor can be worthy of the noble Xianxia." Connolly laughed, but then his face turned gloomy as he said, "Then there's no problem. As long as you give the order, Tank and I will immediately take action. We have rockets, grenades, and even a laser gun. Killing him should not be a problem. Mr. Connolly, I believe you have the strength, but this is robbery, this is murder. I am not willing to do this." Xianxia said, "I believe in cooperation more now. Give me some time, I can persuade him to cooperate with us. We will give him a large sum of money and he will take out his treasure for our research. He can also help us with our research. Isn't this a good thing?" "Right, you can try. But I think he is too arrogant, he might not agree." Connolly bitterly smiled and did not insist. At this time Zhang Tian had already spread out his divine sense and heard their conversation, but Zhang Tian did not take it to heart. They wanted to kill him with just a few sticks. It was no different from a fool's dream. But Zhang Tian was too lazy to deal with them. Because Zhang Tian had discovered something even stranger. The entire Sword Tomb Island seemed to have a very frightening and strange power. This power was erratic, making it difficult for Zhang Tian to circulate his true yuan. If he wanted to fly, the consumption of true yuan was not small. Moreover, the range of his divine sense was greatly reduced. Originally, Zhang Tian's spiritual sense could cover a distance of over 100 miles, but now it could only scan an area of about 10 miles. Moreover, Zhang Tian realized that his satellite phone had no signal at all. At this time, Xiao En and Tank were also complaining that the signal of the walkie-talkie had disappeared again. They asked everyone to stay together and not get separated. Zhang Tian had been cultivating for 10,000 years and had a wealth of experience. Through some clues, Zhang Tian quickly determined that this was not the power of the Sword Tomb's formation or restriction, but an extremely rare creature. Or rather, demons. In the Arctic Circle, especially near the Severnaya Zemlya, many unsolved mysteries had happened. In 1922, the research ship Blue Seagull of the Russian Academy of Sciences once sailed and conducted scientific research near the Severnaya Zemlya, but suddenly the satellite signal was cut off and they lost contact. A few months later, the Russian Navy's salvage team found the blue seabird near Elam Island in Severnaya Zemlya. However, there was no one on the ship. All 24 members of the scientific research team had disappeared into thin air. However, the strange thing was that there were no traces of a struggle and there was no loss of property. What was even more strange was that although the black box on the blue seabird looked intact on the outside, the data recorded inside had disappeared without a trace. The black box was fireproof, shockproof, and waterproof. Historically, it was almost impossible for the data to disappear. Later, scientific researchers discovered that the electromagnetic waves near the Severnaya Zemlya would be severely interfered with, or even completely disappear. Therefore, in the scientific community, this area was also known as the Land of Dead Silence, or Island of Dead Silence. In addition, there were also moving stones. According to NASA's observation on the Sword Tomb Island, through the comparison of satellite images, there were many boulders weighing more than a few tons that could move on the ice by themselves and could travel thousands of meters in one night. Until now, many scientists had come up with various speculations and explanations for this strange phenomenon. There were also huge footprints. There were once tourists who discovered huge footprints more than 50 centimeters long on the Severnaya Zemlya. They took photos and posted them on the internet. There were even people who took pictures of the giants and snow monsters appearing in this place, and they spoke with certainty. However, because it was a civilian who discovered and took photos and posted them, many authorities claimed that it was just a gimmick deliberately created by some bored people who wanted to become famous, just like the crop circle. However, considering that when Zhou Xian defeated Japan and France, there were official refutations of these rumors, it seemed that these rumors were not just groundless accusations. If these rumors are true, then it might really be the doing of these monsters. Zhou Xian heaved a long sigh, frowned, and muttered to himself. I didn't expect that such a rare monster would appear on Earth. Logically speaking, such a powerful monster shouldn't appear in this world. Could it be that there was a crisscross and chaos in the parallel space that led them to enter Earth? This kind of monster was so powerful that it could be said that other than Zhou Xian, there were few people on Earth who knew how to deal with it. Even the immortal state, mortal deity, and earth deity had no way to deal with it. Basically, no one who entered the Sword Tomb Island today except for him could survive. Therefore, he did not intend to kill Xiao Connolly and the others. These cannon fodder meat shields could be used to test the strength of this strange monster. Based on the habits of this strange monster, Zhou Xian felt that there was no need to waste his true essence. He just needed to avoid it and fight it head-on. Soon, Zhou Xian found an area where he could avoid the strange monster. He decided to rest for a while and completely recover his strength and true essence before moving forward. The area Zhou Xian found was very strange. It was not covered in snow at all, and there was even steam rising from it. There were also dozens of monkey-billed seabirds gathered there. Zhou Xian took out a piece of ordinary jade and drew an array in the blink of an eye. Then he put it in his pocket and sat there to rest. At the same time, Xianxia and the others also set up tents in an area near Zhou Xian and set up camp. Zhou Xian had a good impression of Xianxia. At least she was not the kind of person who bullied the weak. Therefore he said calmly, Xianxia, you'd better set up camp here. Otherwise you'll be in great danger. You might even die. Of course, if you're unwilling to leave, you'll have to leave someone behind to patrol the area. It'll be easier for you to escape. I think Teacher Zhang is worrying too much. Xianxia said nothing. Connolly disdainfully sneered, this place is still very far from the sword mound. There's no danger here. He swung his sleeves and confidently said, even if there is danger, I'll stand guard here. There won't be any problems. Xiaoan believed that Zhou Xian was waiting for an opportunity to get close to Xianxia. How could he agree? He taunted, your place is full of bird droppings. It's too disgusting. Why would Princess Xianxia go to your place? Thank you, Teacher Zhang, but forget it. Xianxia saw that the area Zhou Xian was in was indeed full of bird droppings, so she shook her head and softly refused. The young masters immediately mocked with disdain. That's right. Since you're so timid, you shouldn't have come here to explore. It's just a little snow here. What's there to be afraid of? You're not even afraid of Xianxia, but he's scared to this extent. You're worse than a girl. He's so delicate, just like a girl. That's normal. Wuxia people are cowardly, and lacking in courage. They're a nation of sheep. In the end, even the guide Tank arrogantly crossed his arms and shook his head, curling his lips in disdain. Now I'm letting you in. You think this place is dirty. Later, when there's danger, you want to come in again. I won't give you the chance. Zhou Xian said with a mocking smile. Who cares? Xiao disdainfully said. You want to pursue Xianxia? That's too funny. Others give diamonds, but you give her bird droppings. The other young masters burst into laughter. Uncle Connolly, I think you're mistaken. Xianxia originally wanted to talk to Zhou Xian about the Dharma treasure, but after thinking about it, Zhang Tian was so timid. How could he be a true expert? One had to know that those who owned Dharma treasures were definitely extraordinary existences. How could they be so timid? Perhaps Zhang Tian's hair and cooking utensils were picked up by him and left behind by the previous explorers. After hearing her explanation, Connolly slapped his thigh and laughed. That's true. I was too nervous. A young man like him is only a transcendent realm cultivator. And those who can control Dharma treasures are said to be terrifying existences above the immortal state. At this moment, one of the young masters, Reynolds, who was close to Xiao, snorted coldly and said in a low voice, "Since he's not an expert, let's just kill him. He's like a shadow. Too disgusting." This was a no man's land, a place outside the law. If they killed someone, they could dig up a pile of snow and bury him. No one would find out. Therefore, many of the young masters' hidden violent tendencies were stimulated, and they were eager to give it a try. At this point, Connolly had an indifferent attitude, so he didn't say anything. Xianxia looked at Zhang Tian in disappointment. This place was still very far from the sword catacomb. If he was so timid and afraid of death, wouldn't he wet his pants when he faced real danger? Sigh, perhaps I shouldn't have brought him here. Although she was disappointed, Xianxia muttered to herself for a moment before finally shaking her head. Forget it, let's not cause unnecessary trouble. None of you are allowed to kill him. Yeah, I'll listen to Princess Xianxia. Reynolds smiled apologetically and nodded. He then gave Zhang Tian a malicious smile. But a moment later, Reynolds came to Xiaoen's side and said in a low voice, I'll use the sniper rifle to kill him when Xianxia isn't paying attention. I don't think anyone will find out. Okay, I'm pursuing Xianxia. It's not good to kill someone in front of her. You're the best choice. Xiaoen laughed mischievously and nodded. After walking for a long time, everyone was tired. After eating some rations and chatting for a while, they crawled into their tents and sleeping bags to rest. Seeing this, Zhang Tian shook his head. This group of people was too careless. They should have at least left a few people outside to patrol, but they actually all fell asleep. But Zhang Tian couldn't be bothered to remind them. This group of people didn't have good intentions. He had already done his duty by reminding Xianxia. That monster had already poked its head out and looked around. Now all he had to do was wait and watch them get killed. Chapter 740. In the sky, the green aurora borealis flickered and flickered erratically, changing in an instant. The area was quiet and only the sound of the wind could be heard. After some time, a shrill scream was suddenly heard and then it stopped abruptly. Who's screaming? What's going on? Everyone was awakened from their sleep. They came out of their tents and gathered to count the number of people. Reynolds isn't here. Go to his tent. Everyone rushed to Reynolds' tent to check, and then they were so scared that they fell to the ground and screamed. They saw that Reynolds had been frozen into a block of ice and had died an unnatural death. There were several terrifying wounds on his body, as if he had been cut by a sharp blade or clawed by a tiger or lion. What was even more terrifying was that Reynolds was lazy. He didn't even take off his Kevlar bulletproof vest when he slept. But now even the bulletproof vest had been cut open. Seeing this, everyone exclaimed and retreated. Even Connolly was shocked. Could it be a polar bear attack? But that's not right. There are no beast footprints nearby. There are no polar bears on Dead Silence Island. To be exact, there are no creatures other than humans. The tank guide, said in fear. What kind of creature's claws can easily cut open a Kevlar bulletproof vest? Everyone was scared. At this time, Connolly noticed that Zhang Tian didn't have a tent, which meant that Zhang Tian might be an eyewitness. He asked loudly, Mr. Zhang, did you see something invading? I saw it. Zhang Tian said calmly. This thing should be called Snow Demon. It's more than 10 meters tall, extremely low temperature and covered in ice. It has 2 big claws the size of wash basins with sharp bone hooks on them. Moreover, it can transform at will and disguise itself as you. It's impossible to guard against it. Even shamans and werewolves can't defeat it. So you'd better leave quickly. It's too dangerous. Connolly was furious and shouted, Mr. Jiang, are you kidding me? Mr. Jiang, are you making fun of me? The snow demon is a monster that only appeared in legends. It's nonsense. Only a village woman would believe it. How can it be true? Zhang Tian found it laughable and said indifferently, so werewolves and shamans are just legends. In fact, Connolly was a shaman. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was also a superstition and legend. As a shaman, he possessed magic power that ordinary people could not explain. However, Connolly did not even believe in Snow Devil. His thinking was so old-fashioned and conventional. This was very laughable. Actually, there was no need for anyone to die. If you had listened to my advice, Zhou Xian said calmly. Connolly, Sean, and Tank were so embarrassed that their faces turned red. It was as if they had been slapped in the face. After all, Zhou Xian had just warned them that this place was dangerous and they had to be careful. But they all thought that Zhou Xian was cowardly like a woman. If they had listened to Zhou Xian's advice and directly ended the exploration and returned to a safe area, or were cautious, Reynolds would not have died so easily. If you leave now, you still have a chance to live. Otherwise, your chances of survival are slim. Zhou Xian slowly closed his eyes. Connolly was already somewhat depressed and remorseful after Reynolds's tragic death. At this time, Zhou Xian's words touched his sore spot. He could not help but fly into a rage and snort coldly. Kid, I'm leading the team. How can you say anything? How do you know what I'm capable of? As he spoke, he waved his hand and an inch-long flame bloomed between his fingers. He proudly straightened his body. His body suddenly became like a mountain, and his aura was stern as he said in a low voice, "What bullshit, Snow Devil? If it touches me, it will also be burned to ashes and turned into sewage. He can actually create flames out of thin air. This is too amazing. Well, I didn't expect Mr. Connolly to be so powerful. I've long heard that Mr. Connolly is a Caucasus Grand Shaman who can control flames. I didn't believe it before, but seeing it today, it is indeed so. With Connolly here, any Snow Devil will be scared shitless." When everyone saw this, they clicked their tongues in amazement. The original dejection and fear were swept away, and they became 100 times more confident. "Mr. Jiang, do you have such ability? What do you think of my hellfire?" Connolly thought that his flame would be able to subdue Zhou Xian, so he asked with a face full of pride. "Not very good." Zhou Xian did not even bat an eyelid as he smiled mockingly. Connolly's fire control skills were definitely amazing in the eyes of ordinary people, but in fact they were just ordinary flames. And the fireball talismans that Zhou Xian created now were comparable to the three true fire. In his previous life he had even refined the essence of fire and all kinds of strange flames. So why would he care about it? Not very good was already very polite. Otherwise Zhou Xian would have said it was rubbish. Good. Very good. When we reach the sword catacomb, I hope you don't ask me for help. Connolly was so angry that his face turned green. He smiled coldly and turned to leave. Connolly is so powerful, but he doesn't care about him. He's too arrogant. He offended Connolly. I'm afraid he's in for it. At least when there is danger, Connolly won't save him. He can just wait for death. But to the others, it was no different from Zhou Xian slapping Connolly in the face again. They were all very disdainful of Zhou Xian. His EQ is too low. Seeing this, Xianxia also shook her head lightly. Zhou Xian's words just now were indeed unnecessary. No matter what, he should have given Connolly some face and not slapped him in the face. Others might not know, but she knew that Connolly was the strongest in the team. He was even stronger than Sean, Tank, and everyone in the team. Zhou Xian had offended him. If there was really danger, why would Connolly save him? It was useless even if she begged for mercy. Now that Renaud was dead, no one was in the mood to sleep. They buried the body a few 100 meters away and left a sign. Then everyone gathered together to drink and chat. They even sent people to patrol outside in shifts. After all, if there were more deaths, it would be too embarrassing for Connolly and the team. Patter. Patter. While everyone was chatting, suddenly there was a soft sound of footsteps in the distance. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and could not help but be stunned. Their hair stood on end and their souls were about to leave their bodies. They saw that Renaud, who was originally buried in the ice and snow, had actually come back to life and was staggering back. "Renaud, aren't you dead?" Sean frowned and asked. His teeth were chattering. "What, dead?" Renaud said angrily. "I didn't die at all. I was just frozen. Now that the ice has melted, I naturally came back to life." "What about the wounds on your body?" Connolly's eyes were a little wary. At this time, the wounds on Renaud's body were all gone. This was too strange. After receiving Connolly's signal, Tank immediately ran out to check the place where Renault was buried. Renault's body is still there. He's a fake. He's an evil spirit. Hurry up and kill him. A moment later, Tank yelled as he ran back quickly. Hearing this clatter, everyone jumped up together and distanced themselves from Renault. Someone pulled out a gun, loaded it, and aimed at Renault. Tank, why did you harm me? Reynolds took a step back in fear. He then pointed at the tank and said resolutely, don't worry. You're a fake. You ate the real Tank and then disguised yourself as him. Connolly, this is a trap. You have to believe me. Tank shouted loudly and anxiously. The real Renault is already dead. The current Renault is a fake. Hurry up and give the order to shoot. Connolly, Sean, Xianxia, and many of the guards were frightened. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. The situation at this time made their minds confused and they were completely dizzy. How about this? Let's go to the place where Renault is buried together and everything will be clear. Connolly had an idea and said loudly. Now you two throw away your guns and cooperate with the team to verify. Don't look. They're both fake. They're both snow devils. At this time Zhang Tian said coldly, don't think about shooting. Hurry up and run or it'll be too late. Swish. Everyone turned to look at Zhang Tian and shouted angrily. You're still making sarcastic remarks at this time. One of them must be real. How can both of them be fake? He must be messing with our morale. He wants us to kill each other or scare us away so that he can enjoy the treasures of the sword catacomb alone. Is he really messing with us? At this time even Xianxia felt that Zhang Tian had gone a bit too far. If the tank was killed he would have screamed in fear. He was a special forces soldier. But at this time Xianxia suddenly felt that something was wrong. She felt an extreme chill on her back. Yes, the temperature of the Arctic Circle was extremely low, but she was wearing special thermal clothing so she could still bear it. But at this time the chill on her back exploded. It was as if tens of thousands of steel needles had pierced through her clothes. She even felt that she could not bear it and her whole body was almost paralyzed. Xianxia subconsciously turned her head and screamed in fright. My cute little princess Xianxia. Renault suddenly opened his mouth and laughed. Crack. Renault's mouth cracked to his ears. His white teeth were like sharp long knives, spewing out white ice crystals and snowflakes, instantly covering his teeth with a layer of white frost. Renault's eyes also turned into ice crystals in an instant. There were no whites or pupils in his eyes, just like an ice ball. Then he roared like a tiger and bit Xianxia. Xianxia, push him. Connolly reacted quickly. He grabbed Xianxia's collar with his right hand and threw her back more than 10 meters. At the same time he pulled out a small human skin drum from his waist and hit it with a piece of bone as a drumstick. He shouted angrily, Hellfire in the name of God's punishment. Go to hell. Boom. A fire dragon more than 10 meters long swept toward Renault with bared fangs and brandished claws. The temperature was very high, as if it could melt gold and iron. Within 100 meters the ice and snow melted. Everyone felt an extreme heat. At the same time many of the guards moved. Bullets rained down on Reynolds like rain. Some shamans and priests also attacked Renault with their magical artifacts. Their attacks were overwhelming and powerful. But the most terrifying thing was that Connolly's hellfire was useless. It was extinguished when it was a few meters away from Renault. Chapter 741. The temperature plummeted and an ice wall suddenly appeared, freezing all the bullets in the air. How is this possible? Connolly was stunned when he saw this. He was so scared that his face turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. The human-skinned Hellstrom had an extraordinary origin. It was his most powerful move, but it could not restrain the opponent at all. I'll help. Xiao En wanted to show off in front of Xianxia, so he took large strides forward and threw a punch at Reynolds. At this time he did not hide his powerful werewolf bloodline and stimulated his potential to the limit. The punch was like a cannonball flying across the sky, containing earth-shattering power. Even a small car would be sent flying by it. You're too weak. The demonized Renault snorted disdainfully and clenched his fists. Kikiki. Several 1-meter-long bone blades emerged from the tip of his fists, just like Wolverine after transformation. Then he waved his arms and slashed the sharp bone blades at Sean without hesitation. The bone blades were crystal clear like ice and jade, but they were incomparably sharp and could cut through alloy steel. It hurts. Xian retreated quickly, but 3 fingers on his right hand were chopped off in an instant. Blood flowed out as he screamed and retreated. In the next moment, Reynolds dashed forward like an arrow, running as if he was flying, drifting like a ghost. He waved his bone blade wildly, causing blood to spurt out. In the blink of an eye, he had killed several guards. At this time, Xianxia ran in panic and actually fled to Zhang Tian's location. Renaud chased after a few steps, but a trace of fear flashed across his face. He actually stopped abruptly. Is there something strange about this place? The temperature seems to be much higher than outside. Seeing this, Xianxia suddenly realized what was going on. She waved her hand and shouted, "Come here, Mr. Jiang is safe here." Run. Everyone ran toward Zhang Tian's location. I didn't expect Mr. Jiang to be an expert. I can see that these two are monsters. A young master said, wiping his cold sweat. Humph, what's so great about him? Tank is not a monster. He's mistaken. Connolly was flustered and exasperated. He then shouted, "Bring Tank in too. Is he scared out of his wits?" Yes. One of the guards nearby responded and grabbed Tank, who had been standing there motionlessly, and started running. "Tank, why aren't you running?" "Why should I run? Shouldn't you be the one running?" Behind him, a sinister voice rang out. It sounded like ice crystals rubbing against each other. It was so ear-piercing that it made one's teeth ache. When the guard turned around to look, he couldn't help but be frightened out of his wits and fell on his butt. "Tank, don't kill me. Have you forgotten that we drank together just now?" The Tank suddenly turned into a monster that was 8 meters tall, covered in white fur with a huge head and protruding fangs. Oh my god. The guard's screams stopped abruptly. This was because the transformed Tank had already picked up his head and started chewing and swallowing it. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they almost wet their pants on the spot. As Tank's mouth opened and closed, the guard's brain was splattered. Blood gushed out and his chest was crushed. In the blink of an eye, he was completely eaten by Tank. Fortunately, everyone had already run to Zhang Tian and entered the area of influence of Zhang Tian's spell formation. The 2 snow demons looked at Zhang Tian fearfully and didn't follow him. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. They no longer had the slightest bit of disrespect for Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian was able to protect himself, or rather he was able to find this safe zone. Just based on this point alone, they could only sigh at their own inferiority. If not for Zhang Tian occupying this safe zone, it could be said that they would have become corpses by now. However, in this battle 7 or 8 of their companions had already died. Moreover, the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Fresh blood stained the ground red, reminding everyone that the danger before them was not over yet. The desolate and deathly still ice and snow island, the extreme weather conditions, the strange and powerful terrifying creatures, the endless dangers and the unknown fate. All of this was like a huge boulder pressing down on everyone's hearts. Everyone's nerves were so tense that they felt like they were about to snap. At this moment, the 2 strange creatures began to eat the bloody corpses outside the spell formation. Tsk tisk. They sat on the ground, their sharp teeth cutting through the skulls. They even extended their large claws into the skulls and pulled the brain into their mouths. They swallowed the flesh and brain in large mouthfuls. Wunch! The sound of chewing and eating could be heard from afar. Everyone's hair stood on end and goosebumps appeared on their skin. After all, those were human corpses. They were their own kind and companions. However, they had now become food for these creatures. At this moment, Renaud and Tank had returned to their human forms. They turned their heads from time to time. Their crystal ball-like eyeballs emitted a cold glint as they quietly stared at everyone. Xianxia had a very strange feeling. These 2 monsters had emotions. Yes, it was a kind of disdain and contempt. It was like a high-level life form looking down on a low-level life form. It was as if they were sizing up their food. "Did I say you could come in?" At this moment, a cold voice sounded out, and everyone turned to look at Zhang Tian in unison. "What do you mean?" Shaowen's right hand had been bandaged. The scar had yet to heal, but he had already forgotten the pain. He anxiously shouted with a pale face. "Is this your territory? This is Russian territory. Why can't we come here?" "That's right. You only discovered that these two monsters can't come to this place, but this place doesn't belong to you. Do you want to monopolize it? What a joke. The other young master Quinn also loudly shouted. Mr. Jiang, I admit that you are an expert, but you are too narrow-minded. Connolly was righteous and held the moral high ground. He said contemptuously, we won't stay here. We won't get in your way if we stay here. Why do you have to be so aggressive and harm others without benefiting yourself? Isn't it good to be kind to others? Xianxia also tried to persuade him. That's right, Mr. Jiang. Just help them. After all, we are a team. Oh, now you remember that we are a team? Zhang Tian was so angry that he almost laughed. He laughed mockingly and said, he sneered and said, now you remember to be kind to others? I have repeatedly warned you not to put yourselves in danger, but you thought that I was harming you. Why didn't you treat me as your teammate back then? Why didn't you listen to my opinion? When Xiao En forced me to jump off the plane, why didn't you say that we were a team? When Connolly wanted to kill me and steal my treasure, did you treat me as your teammate? Renault and Xiao En even wanted to shoot me. At that time, what did you treat me as? Not to mention that I met you by chance. I had already paid for this trip before I set off. We originally had nothing to do with each other. Why should I help you when you have repeatedly tried to harm me? With every word Zhang Tian said, everyone's faces turned redder. By the time Zhang Tian finished speaking, everyone felt as if they had been slapped a dozen times. Their faces were so red that it was as if blood was about to drip out. That's right. Zhang Tian had warned them more than once before, but no one took it seriously. Some thought that Zhang Tian was showing off his ability to attract Xianxia's attention and win her favor. Some thought that Zhang Tian wanted to monopolize the treasure on Sword Tomb Island and scared everyone away. Even if Renault and Tank were in a strange situation and death was close at hand. When Zhang Tian reminded them, no one believed him. They were still high and mighty, repeatedly disrespecting Zhang Tian, mocking and threatening him. But now it was proven that Zhang Tian was not exaggerating at all. They really did not have the ability to deal with danger. If they had listened to Zhang Tian's opinion from the beginning, no one would have died. Even if they had entered Zhang Tian's camp from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Hearing those words, the crowd was speechless. Their faces turned red and they were extremely embarrassed. They felt so ashamed that they had no way to show their faces. The cruel truth was that Zhang Tian's words were like a heavy slap to everyone's face. It could be said that when compared to Zhang Tian, everyone seemed to be ignorant and stupid to the extreme. Moreover, they were extremely stubborn. What was even worse was that Connolly, Sean, Renault, Tank and the others had all wanted to kill Zhang Tian. If Xianxia had not stopped them, they might have already taken action and shot Zhang Tian to death. But now that danger had erupted, why should they need Zhang Tian's protection? Where was their shame? Where was their shame? Mr. Jiang, I know we are in the wrong. I sincerely apologize to you and ask for your forgiveness. But I hope you can help us. Xianxia's face was full of shame. She bowed deeply and sincerely apologized, pleading with tears in her beautiful eyes. In fact, she was partly responsible for the current consequences. In this expedition, the guide was Tank, and the escort team was organized and led by Connolly. They all had the right to speak. But the organizer was Xianxia. In fact, she was the biggest leader and the final commander. If she had a worried heart, if she had recognized Zhang Tian's extraordinariness and listened to his advice, so many people would not have died. But Connolly was even more unhappy. This was equivalent to him being recognized as a mistake and slapped in the face. Actually, being slapped in the face was a small matter. The key was that the people who had died all had great backgrounds and were not to be trifled with. They were either shamans or priests, or the young masters of oligarchs. And after the trip ended, it was very likely that someone would be held accountable and he, Connolly, would be the first person responsible. What kind of teammate are you? If you were a teammate, why didn't you call everyone over when something happened just now? Connolly was completely desperate at this moment. He wanted to argue even if it was unreasonable. He wanted to paint white as black. You didn't do anything from the beginning to the end, nor did you say anything. You just watched as they were killed. His gaze was cold and his words were sharp. Every word of his was a stab to the heart. Why didn't the two monsters attack you? Why were you so familiar with their habits even when you saw them? Why were you able to determine that they wouldn't come if you were in this place? Every time he asked a question he would take a step forward and ask a few questions. He was already facing Zhang Tian and roaring angrily. I even suspect that you are in cahoots with them, or that they are monsters that you have reared. Chapter 742. As soon as he said that, everyone was provoked. They all stepped back and looked at Zhang Tian with fear and hatred. What Connolly said makes sense. That's indeed suspicious. Be careful of him. Some of the guards even pointed their guns at Zhang Tian. They were on high alert, afraid that Zhang Tian would attack them. Put down your guns. Mr. Zhang is not our enemy. And Fia's face turned red from anger at her pig-like teammates. She shouted loudly. Aha, if I wanted to kill you I could kill you easily. Do you think you're still alive? Zhang Tian laughed. His eyes were full of disdain. After all, this is just our guess. I don't have any evidence. So let's both compromise. Connolly was emboldened by everyone's support. He threatened in a cold voice. We'll hold you responsible. We'll hold you accountable. We won't kill you, but you have to give up this safe zone. I'll leave, but don't kowtow to me later. Zhang Tian's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Connolly as if he was looking at a fool. Why should I kowtow to you? Connolly said disdainfully. Because once I leave you'll be killed. Zhang Tian smiled faintly. Oh, come on. The farther you go the better. You're the biggest threat. Sean snorted. That's right. Leave now. We'll be safe after you leave. Bruce, another young master, snorted. Leave now. Leave now. The group of young masters waved their hands to chase them away, as if Zhang Tian would do them harm. In fact, from their point of view, such a choice was not wrong. Zhang Tian was also made of flesh and blood. If he left, he would definitely attract the attention of the two monsters, right? The two monsters would be full after eating Zhang Tian, so they wouldn't need to eat them. You wait for your death. Zhang Tian shook his head. He didn't want to say anything more. He took a step forward and walked toward the sword catacomb. The place Zhang Tian was in was indeed extraordinary. It was a land of fire spirits. Deep underground there was a surge of fire spirit energy. That was why there was heat on the surface. Seabirds gathered and left behind large amounts of bird droppings. This fire spiritual aura was indeed the bane of the snow demons, causing them to be wary and avoid it. However, the fire spiritual chi alone was not enough to stop them. After all, the fire spiritual energy was hundreds of meters deep underground and had been weakened to 80 to 90% by the time it reached the surface. The real counter to the snow devil was a jade pendant that Zhang Tian had drawn with an array that had the effect of buffing and gathering. However, the moment Zhang Tian took the jade pendant away, the entire area would be rendered useless. The two snow devils would still be able to move around freely. Mr. Zhang, please stay. It's dangerous outside. Xianxia subconsciously called out. She probably felt that it was not right to do so. After all, this safe zone was discovered by Zhang Tian, but now everyone had chased Zhang Tian away. Xianxia, this Mr. Zhang is strange. I think we should stay away from him. Connolly hurriedly stopped her, his eyes cold. Think about it. How did he know that monsters would appear? Why didn't those monsters eat him? Xianxia had never encountered such a dangerous situation. She had never seen so many of her companions die at once. She was a little dazed from the shock. In that moment of hesitation, Zhang Tian was already hundreds of meters away. Mr. Zhang, come back. Xianxia shouted, but Zhang Tian ignored her. Ah, those two monsters have discovered him. He's going to be bitten to death. Sean was ecstatic when he saw that Tank and Renault had turned to look in Zhang Tian's direction. Yes. That idiot. He just left when we told him to. What a brainless fool. Bruce said mockingly. That's great. If they eat him again they should be full and let us go. The heir of the oligarch called Quinn slapped his thigh and laughed, but his tears flowed like crazy. Why aren't you eating? Your food is out. Some of the young masters couldn't wait and shouted at the two monsters, reminding them to eat Zhang Tian. In such a dangerous place, under extreme fear and under heavy psychological pressure, the ugliness of human nature was magnified 10 times, 100 times. Many hidden ruthlessness, cruelty, despicableness and selfishness were all stimulated. The degeneration of human nature was like the night of 100 ghosts and demons. However, everyone's laughter suddenly stopped. Everyone's smiles froze on their faces. Tank and Renault turned their heads in unison and looked over. Their cold eyes flashed with greed and savagery. What are they doing? Quinn screamed desperately. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he trembled. Xian was so scared that his legs trembled and he peed frantically. Tank and Renault had already stood up and were approaching them. One of the guards held a laser gun and fired at the two snow demons. The two snow demons' chests were pierced and smoke rose. However, they were instantly covered in ice crystals and repaired in the blink of an eye. God! Come and save me. Mom, I want to go home. What kind of monster is this? Even a laser gun can't kill it. It's too scary. At this moment, everyone was wailing in despair. Even Connolly's eyes were filled with fear. He was so scared that he was trembling. This was a high-energy laser weapon. It could be said to be the most powerful portable weapon. It could even cut through steel plate and titanium alloy. This kind of gun was still in the laboratory stage. It was more expensive than a Mi-26. Usually the army was not equipped with it. This was one of the most advanced weapons factory in Russia that Anfia's family had taken from the laboratory. However, it was useless. Dong, dong, dong. The heavy footsteps seemed to be stepping on everyone's hearts. Everyone's heartbeat sped up and they found it difficult to breathe. Everyone was in despair. What should we do? The young master named Bruce was trembling. Tears were streaming down his face as he yelled hysterically, "I'm sorry. I want to go home. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. I still have a lot of money to spend. I still want to drink vodka. I still want to sleep with beauties. How is this possible? Isn't this a safe zone?" Connolly was also panicking. He did not know what to do and could not believe it. At this moment, the two snow demons were only 10 meters away from them. However, no one tried to escape. They were just huddled together like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They knew that they could not escape. The snow demons were as fast as flying horses. Even if they escaped, they would still die. Get out. All of a sudden, Sean's eyes turned vicious. He raised his leg and kicked Kane's lower back. After all, Sean had the blood of a werewolf. His strength was far greater than that of an ordinary person. Kane was kicked more than 10 meters away. Kane only saw a blur in front of his eyes. When he looked again, he saw that the two demons had already opened their bloody mouths. Who kicked me? Kane was trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He panted crazily and said to Tank and Reynolds in a choked voice, "I know I'm dead for sure, but I just want to know who the fuck kicked me. Guess." Tank licked the saliva at the corner of his mouth with his long tongue and asked jokingly, "I guess it's Bruce. I slept with his girlfriend. I think he already knows." Kane hesitated for a moment and said, "Fuck." Bruce gritted his teeth and cursed. He did not expect to hear this news before he died. It was too tragic. "No, it's Sean who kicked you." Tank grinned. His mouth split open to the roots of his ears. His teeth were as sharp as steel knives and sticky saliva hung from them. Humans are really interesting." Reynolds laughed out loud. "Yeah, so interesting." Tank agreed. "Sean, you fucking piece of shit." Kane was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He left his last words, which were eaten up by Tank in the blink of an eye. Clang, clang, clang. Reynolds took large strides and ran toward Connolly and the others. Everyone cried out miserably as they pushed each other forward, throwing away their helmets and armors. It was complete chaos. Calm down, calm down. This is a safe zone. You won't be able to get in." Connolly still had a glimmer of hope and tried to comfort everyone. But it turned out that he was too optimistic. Reynolds rushed over in the blink of an eye and directly grabbed a young master. He pulled one of his thighs and tore it apart. Blood splattered and dripped down. Steaming hot internal organs flowed out. The young master did not even have time to scream before he was torn into 2 pieces. This was a bloody scene. It was extremely horrifying and made one's scalp tingle. After tearing the young master apart, Reynolds immediately bit and ate heartily. He then rushed toward the others. "It's useless. This place is not safe. Run." There was utterly no need for Connolly's reminder. The crowd that was terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies shrieked and scattered in all directions like terrified stray dogs. However, they were too slow. Or rather, they were too slow compared to the 2 snow demons. Reynolds and Tank roared loudly. Their roars were like thunder and they were like galloping horses. They waved their claws full of bone hooks and chased after the group. Ki, ki, ki. Heads flew up and blood splattered on the ice. In the blink of an eye, they were frozen and their internal organs flowed out. The exploration team members fell into a pool of blood one by one like harvested rice. Unlike the others who were running wildly, Xianxia still retained some rationality. She ran in the direction that Zhang Tian had left. She could now conclude that Zhang Tian was definitely not an ordinary person. That place was not a safe zone, and Zhang Tian himself was the best protective talisman. Only by staying by Zhang Tian's side would they be safe. In this place only Zhang Tian could save everyone's lives. Mr. Jiang, save us. Xianxia had already seen Zhang Tian's back from afar and cried out happily. However, Xianxia was directly knocked to the ground by Shan, who was running wildly in a panic. Her ankle was sprained. After getting up, her speed decreased sharply and she was about to be caught. When Reynolds saw this, his eyes were ferocious and excited. He opened his bloody mouth and roared at the sky. He broke through the heavy snow and quickly chased after them. Help! Xianxia cried out for help to Sean, Connolly, and the others who were running past her. However, Sean could not even take care of himself. How could he care about her? He was running for his life like a rabbit being chased by a ferocious tiger. In a matter of life and death, the cowardice and selfishness of human nature would be magnified infinitely. Otherwise, Shaoan wouldn't have kicked his good friend Kane out to be a meat shield. Chapter 743. He loved Xianxia very much, but at this moment, under the threat of death, he couldn't care less. Could even be said that he had purposely knocked Xianxia down. If Xianxia was eaten, it would at least delay the monsters for a while and his chances of survival would be higher. Connolly did not care about his employer anymore. His fire control was useless against these monsters and he would only die if he went up. At this moment, his adrenaline was rapidly secreting, and he could not help but tremble as he ran without looking back. They quickly ran a kilometer away and only Xianxia was left behind. She was about to be caught by the two snow demons. It's over. Xianxia is dead for sure. A guard looked back and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. Should we go and save her? Otherwise, how are we going to report back? A guard asked hesitantly. Save? How? Sean's face was as pale as paper as he cursed. If you want to save her, then go. Stop arguing, it's so annoying. This adventure is over. Connolly shook his head helplessly and sighed softly. Let's go quickly. When we reach a place where we can find satellite signals, we'll call for a helicopter to pick us up. A trace of coldness flashed in his eyes as he swept his gaze across the crowd. If his family asks, you have to remember that we did not leave him in the lurch. We did our best. All the dead sacrificed themselves to save Xianxia. Xianxia did not expect that these young masters, who usually flattered her in every way possible, and these loyal guards who called themselves heroes, would choose to stand by and do nothing at this critical moment. Renault's mouth cracked open, and his teeth were as sharp as icicles as he roared at Xianxia. I don't want to die. Facing this unkillable monster, Xianxia stumbled back and fell to the ground, crying helplessly. Evil creature, get lost. Just as Xianxia was in despair, a soft shout rang out. Xianxia turned around and saw Zhang Tian appear behind her like a ghost. Zhang Tian, who was dressed in plain clothes, stood proudly like a jade mountain, as if he could support the heavens and earth. You're not afraid of me? Reynolds stopped in his tracks and stared at Zhang Tian as he roared. What are you afraid of? Zhang Tian coldly snorted. You're not afraid of me. Reynolds pounded his chest and roared at the sky. His voice was like thunder breaking the wind and snow. Do you know that I can't be killed? You should be afraid of me. He became more and more agitated and his expression became more and more warped. His gaze was extremely ferocious and it seemed as if it could annihilate the world. With a roar, the sky and earth changed color. Even the aurora became distorted as a large hole was torn open. Rumble. His roar was like a thunderstorm. The people in the distance only felt a sharp pain in their eardrums and a splitting headache. Their eyes rolled back and they fainted on the ground. Some shamans and oracles even had their spiritual power severely affected, and blood spurted out of their mouths and noses. A mountain several kilometers away was shattered, triggering a huge avalanche that swept up thousands of piles of snow. Although Xianxia was very close, she was protected by Zhang Tian's astral winds, so there was no problem at all. Do you think you can't be killed? Do you think you're a true god, the god of Hongmeng? Ridiculous. A hint of disdain flashed in Zhang Tian's eyes. You, or should I say, you're actually just a spiritual power in the universe or an extremely cold distorted force field. So, you can make the electromagnetic signals in this area disappear. You're between life and non-life. You're shapeless and can only live in the bodies of humans. You're hard to kill, but I can break everything. Besides, you can't even be called a Dharma law or Tao law. Boom. After Zhang Tian said that, Snow Fiend, who had taken over Reynolds's body, took a step back in fear as if it had seen an evil ghost. Who are you? I've been here for more than 1,000 years, but no one has ever seen through my background. Snow Fiend hissed. You don't deserve to know my name. Zhang Tian sneered. But I want to ask you, how did you come to Earth? This kind of dead planet with no spirit chi can't give birth to such a terrifying energy like yours. I remember a long time ago I lived on ancient Earth. At that time the world was full of spirit chi. Many of my people and I could fly, form rivers, move mountains and fill seas. Reynolds was in a daze. Then he said with a face full of fear. But one day it came. It's here and everyone's dead. Gods, immortals, humans, everything died. No one was its match. Could kill gods and immortals. I was also killed by it. Zhang Tian listened quietly. He already had some understanding in his heart. These snow fiends were actually the divine soul fragments of a powerful cultivator on ancient Earth. Yes, Zhang Tian found that there wasn't just one snow fiend here, but at least a few dozen of them. But they were of the same origin and belonged to the same divine soul fragments. They could split and merge in an instant. Some were strong and some were weak. Because they could merge and split, they could also share the energy they obtained. Every time they devoured a human, their bodies and minds would become a little stronger. Otherwise, they would have disappeared long ago. What Reynolds said was the memory of the owner of these divine soul fragments. Zhang Tian could now infer that the owner of these divine soul fragments was extremely powerful and had even reached the level of tribulation transcendence. Otherwise, his divine soul fragments wouldn't have existed for so long and even had some vague memories. What else? Zhang Tian saw that he didn't say anything and asked. I died, but my divine soul saw that the spirit chi on Earth was gradually drying up. Some cultivators flew away in aircraft. Reynolds looked gloomy and said in a hoarse voice. Some divine souls were annihilated and some were taken away. But I didn't want to go. Where did they go? Why didn't you go with them? Zhang Tian asked. This is my home. My lover is also here. At this time Reynolds's fingers nimbly made a few gestures. Suddenly, a dim spiritual energy floated out from his fingertips. He carefully held it with both hands as if he was holding a delicate flower or a tender leaf. It was as precious as a diamond. He said affectionately, she can't withstand the strong wind of space travel. She will be completely annihilated on the way. Ice crystal-like tears flowed out of his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, so I'm here to accompany her. I've been with her for thousands of years, maybe even longer. My memory is also very vague. I've been using my spiritual energy to nourish her every day. I'm getting weaker and weaker. I have no choice but to devour the spiritual energy of humans. Seeing this, Zhang Tian sighed softly and said, she's already dead. This is just the ember of her divine soul. You can't even talk to her. But I feel that she can talk to me every day. Snow Demon smiled foolishly. Forget it. It's too painful for you to live. You've already fallen into the demonic path. Destroy yourself. Zhang Tian suddenly felt a little sorry for him and tried to persuade him. Perhaps it was the attachment and obsession brought by the ember of his lover's divine soul that allowed him to survive for so long. Otherwise he would have been annihilated long ago. No. I don't want to die. Snow Demon Renault sacrificed this divine soul into his own body. He suddenly raised his head and laughed sinisterly. Your spiritual energy is very strong. If I devour your spiritual energy, I might be able to live for 10,000 years. You're no match for me. Zhang Tian raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, do you know that the people you devour also have parents, lovers, attachments and love? Then let's try it. Snow Demon Renault roared loudly. His murderous intent rose as if a demon god had descended. There was a loud rumble. Fragments of the snow demon's divine soul swept over from all directions. Even the one on Tank's body gathered in his body. His figure suddenly grew taller. Crack, crack. He instantly turned into a 10-meter-tall young man with a rustic appearance and an abnormally tall body. He wore an animal skin coat, revealing his unusually strong muscles. He wore straw sandals on his feet and a feather crown on his head. A necklace made of dragon horns hung around his neck. He held a 10-meter-long bone club in his hand. This was the appearance of the ancestors of ancient Earth. He was filled with a primitive and wild aura. Although he was completely made of ice crystals and snowflakes, his surging blood was forcibly condensed from his appearance when he was alive. Perhaps he had once been a peer of Fushi Shenong. Perhaps he had seen Ho Yi shoot down the sun. Perhaps he had seen Gong Gong angrily attack Mount Buzhou. There were many unknowns and mysterious auras on him. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. As expected, there might really have been a developed cultivation civilization on ancient Earth. It might have happened more than once. Boom! The snow demon tiger roared. It raised its cudgel and smashed down on Jiang Tian's head. Crack! Before the bone club arrived, the violent pressure had already arrived. Heaven and earth changed color and the wind and clouds surged. A huge crack 3 to 4 miles long appeared on the ground. In the distance, a glacier more than a few hundred meters tall was directly crushed into powder. Seeing this, Xianxia exclaimed. She was of noble status and had experienced many things. She knew werewolves and shamans and was very knowledgeable. However, she had never seen such a terrifying expert. You are very powerful, but compared to my strength, you are still too far away. Jiang Tian's eyes were full of contempt as he waved his hand. A giant golden palm that was 7 to 8 meters long swept out with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Clang! The giant golden palm hit Reynolds like a rubber ball. Whoosh! Snow Demon was like a giant rubber ball that flew dozens of meters away. The ice on the ground cracked and caved in, forming a deep pit. Boom! Cracks appeared on the Snow Demon's huge body. Even one of its arms was completely shattered. Dozens of kilometers away from where Jiang Tian was, in a cave on another island. The glacier where the cave was located was carved into the shape of a giant wolf's head. An ice wolf's head. If the overlords of the underground world were here, they would definitely be frightened. Because this was the lair of the moon-worshipping wolf tribe, where the wolf ancestor resided. Wolf Ancestor Mountain. The one-armed wolf king Alexander was bowing to an old man with a wild and ferocious aura who was sitting on a tall mystic ice chair. He said sincerely, Your Majesty Wolf Ancestor, please take me to the tomb of the treasured sword. Maybe I can be nourished and form a new arm. Alexander, you are not qualified. The old man was the wolf ancestor. He was skinny and had protruding ribs. His hair had fallen out and he was very old. However, his eyes were as sharp as blades, ferocious and violent, and there was a kind of overbearing and destructive aura. Chapter 744. You betrayed the werewolves and cooperated with the despicable humans. Humans were once our enemies. No, now humans are our enemies too. The wolf ancestor roared angrily. They hunted us and stole our habitat. But you colluded with them. Get lost. You are expelled from the glorious werewolves. Alexander was forced to take a step back by the violent pressure. The blood in his chest churned and his face changed drastically. It had been decades, but the wolf ancestor's strength seemed to be even stronger than before. He could feel that he wouldn't even last 3 minutes in front of the wolf ancestor before dying a violent death. Behind the wolf ancestor stood a few middle-aged werewolves. These middle-aged werewolves were tall and strong with pure blood. They were strong and powerful and exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Their strength was on par with Alexander's, if not stronger. They were called wolf servants, and were the direct descendants of the wolf ancestor. If they were born, they would shake the world and stir up a storm. Wolf ancestor, I cooperated with the Russian military to preserve your bloodline. Sometimes we need to compromise. Alexander shook his head helplessly and explained. Let them extract our blood and use our excellent and powerful genes to modify those weak and lowly humans? The wolf ancestor stood up, his eyes filled with arrogance as he shouted angrily. This is not to preserve our bloodline, but to pollute our noble race and make us impure. Go away. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. Boom. As soon as he said that, a dozen wolf servants stepped forward and roared angrily at Alexander. Fine, then I'll go find the secret of the sword vault myself. Seeing this, the Wolf King secretly gritted his teeth, turned around and walked out of the cave. But all of a sudden he stopped in his tracks. Without turning his head, he warned with a cold expression, "Wolf ancestor, for the continuation of the werewolf's bloodline, please don't become enemies with Kong Teichu." "Why? You are a member of the werewolves, why are you speaking for our enemy?" the wolf ancestor asked with a trace of anger. "Kong Teichu is too strong." A trace of bitterness appeared at the corner of Alexander's mouth. He shook his head and sighed, "I once wanted to become stronger and take revenge for my severed arm. But when I saw him sweep through the French army and saw the video of him killing a human immortal in Wuxia, I thought that the wolf clan was no match for him. If you want to challenge him, only death awaits." "Alexander, you've been with humans for too long. You've lost the courage and pride of a wolf." The wolf ancestor laughed and said disdainfully, "Humans are as weak as ants, not worth mentioning. If it wasn't for the rapid development of their technology and their reliance on firearms, they would have been defeated long ago. This earth would have long been the world of the werewolves." The werewolf raised his chin high and said proudly, "You have to know that I was ranked on the power roll 100 years ago. I once competed with the ancestral patriarch of the Hong sect and Hao Taichung of Mount Shu. Kong Teichu is no match for me." A sharp glint flashed across his eyes as he said coldly, "After the sword vault opens, I must get all the treasures. The next step is to set foot in Sidoni and kill Kong Teichu. Sidoni believes in the gods, and I will replace him as the new god of Sidoni." Seeing this, a wry smile appeared on Alexander's face. He shook his head and said, "You are digging your own grave. How dare you talk to me like that?" Just as the wolf ancestor was about to lose his temper, a series of thunderous roars came into his ears. The wolf ancestor's face darkened as he heard the strange roars. "That is the snow demon. He has killed many werewolves. Let's go and have a look." Then, boom, he turned into a giant werewolf and rushed out of the cave. The other werewolves followed closely behind. On the other side of Xianxia. "Arg. You are no match for me. I am an immortal and humans are just weak ants." The snow demon condensed an arm once more and roared out. Holding the large bone club, it swept up a snow dragon and charged forward. "I have already given you a chance. If you keep talking nonsense, I will kill you." Jiang Tian scolded. "You can't kill me. I am immortal. I am very powerful. You submit to me." The snow demon roared angrily. He swept his club and rolled up thousands of piles of snow as if he could destroy the world. The snow demon knew how powerful Jiang Tian was, so he didn't hold back and used all his strength. The force of this strike was so great that it could smash a tank into a metal pancake and capsize a large warship. "Submit to you? You think too highly of yourself." Jiang Tian was filled with disdain as he threw out a punch. "You are just a divine soul fragment. Even at your peak, you are not worthy of carrying my shoes." Boom. There was an earth-shattering sound as a giant golden fist landed on the snow demon's chest like a meteor. Bam. The snow demon exploded. Within a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers, air currents and ice were sent flying. The snow demon's mental strength was attached to the snow and ice. Naturally, it exploded. At that moment, the snow demon's mental strength was torn to pieces. It was greatly depleted and was almost completely annihilated. I can't die. I won't die. I am an almighty. I am a supreme immortal." The snow demon's voice was like the howling of the wind, shaking the void. It sounded distant and close at times, echoing in all directions. It was ethereal, tragic, and terrifying. This time, the snow demon took half a minute to successfully form a body of ice and snow. However, it was obvious that he was very weak. His facial features were distorted and his body was swaying. It was obvious that his mental strength had been weakened by more than half. "One more blow and I will kill you." Jiang Tian sighed and shook his head. Spiritual power originally needed to be stored in the physical body in order to survive. Once it left the body, it would be like a tree without roots. Without nourishment, how could it survive? An ordinary person's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls could only survive for a few breaths after the death of the body. Even if an expert cultivated a primordial spirit, he couldn't leave the body at will, let alone live for more than 1,000 years. It was a kind of obsession. No, I won't die. I will devour your divine soul and use it as nourishment. The snow demon roared at the sky and attacked Zhang Tian again. The icy fist broke through the air and hit Zhang Tian. In an instant, the temperature dropped to absolute 0. It wanted to freeze Zhang Tian's body to death. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, icicles and ice arrows formed in front of him. They looked like blue gemstones, but they were so sharp that they could easily penetrate alloys. They were aimed at Zhang Tian. Sigh. Zhang Tian sighed and used the gung metal divine body for the first time. Suddenly, he emitted an infinite amount of golden light that illuminated the area within a 1-kilometer radius. At this time, his body seemed to be cast in gold. He was like a golden Buddha that had descended to the mortal world. He was like a peerless god of war who stepped on the eternal sky. Crack. Zhang Tian punched. The snow demon's fist was shattered into countless pieces. Then its entire arm and half of its shoulder were shattered. Arg. Snow demon screamed miserably and staggered backwards. It couldn't feel physical pain, but the weakening and annihilation of its mental strength was very uncomfortable. The next moment, the golden lake in Zhang Tian's forehead rippled. Clang. The golden armor general leaped out and stabbed Snow Demon in the chest with his sharp saber. Smack. At this time there was a soft sound. The ember of the divine soul of the Snow Demon's lover was shattered and turned into gray smoke. We are already dead. We can't be resurrected, the remaining divine soul said with the last of its strength. I haven't been happy all these years. Not at all. Don't be stubborn. Don't make me suffer. Arg. Don't die. Don't go. We have to be together forever. Snow Devil struggled to get up, wailing and howling. It dragged its broken leg and body as it limped and chased after it, waving its hands to grab the gray smoke. Its mental strength was severely weakened. The distortion force field couldn't hold on. Its torso and limbs kept condensing and shattering. But the gray smoke passed through its fingers and didn't stay. It eventually dissipated. There was only a vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth, and nothing was left. Dead. Yes, she's already dead. I'm dead too. I'm just an obsession. The snow demon stood there with its head lowered. It looked at its empty chest and muttered to itself in a hoarse voice. It's too painful. It's really too painful. For so many years I couldn't hug her. I couldn't see her. I couldn't even feel my own existence. There's only endless emptiness and loneliness. There's only endless hatred and regret. The snow demon trembled violently. Its mental strength shook violently and was quickly destroyed. Its face became more and more blurry. Its facial features were distorted. Snowflakes and ice crystals fell from its body. Do you hate me? Zhang Tian recalled the golden armored general and shook his head with a sigh. If not for me you might not have realized. No, I don't hate you. The snow demon slowly shook its head. I shouldn't have existed for so many years. It should have ended long ago. Now it's time for me to go. The next moment there was a loud bang. The snow demon's body exploded, turning into millions of snowflakes and ice crystals that drifted down. The snowflakes and ice crystals covered an area of several hundred meters. It was as if there was a snowstorm. That obsessive-like mental strength had been completely destroyed. Jiang. Kangti. When Wolf King Alexander rushed to a glacier, he just happened to see the snow demon self-destruct in front of Zhang Tian. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Chapter 745. One had to know that this snow demon was too powerful and terrifying. It had existed for hundreds of years. It had dominated the Northern Isles and killed many experts of the Winter Soldiers and ancestral Wolf Mountain. Even the wolf ancestor had to avoid it. It had fought with it for decades without a way to win. But now, it had self-destructed in front of Zhang Tian. Alexander knew that Zhang Tian was very strong, but he didn't know that Zhang Tian was strong to such an extent. At this time, the wolf ancestor and the werewolves were still a few kilometers away from Zhang Tian. But how could they avoid Zhang Tian's divine sense? Zhang Tian also saw Alessandra, but he was too lazy to pay attention to it. He was just a defeated opponent. If he submitted obediently, that would be it. If he didn't, he would directly smash him into pieces with a single slap. He should be the legendary wolf ancestor. However, the old man behind Alessandra with a walking stick made Zhang Tian's heart skip a beat. This old man had the purest moon wolf bloodline and had at least 300 years of life. Such a long life, but his qi and blood were still very strong, far surpassing Zeus at his peak. His combat strength was comparable to the human immortal Situ Yuanhao. However, Zhang Tian didn't care. When Zhang Tian killed Situ Yuanhao, he was still at the 7th stage of qi refinement, but now he was at the 8th stage. If he wanted to kill the wolf ancestor, it would be like swatting a fly. At this time, Zhang Tian also noticed that Alessandra and the wolf ancestor were divided into 2 distinct groups, each leading a team. The dozen or so werewolves behind Alessandra seemed to be more modern. They were wearing down and synthetic fiber clothes, wristwatches and backpacks with cooked food and daily necessities. They seemed to have completely integrated into the secular world. If it weren't for their unusually tall bodies, ordinary people would think that they were ordinary humans. Behind Alessandra, there were 7 or 8 middle-aged men in addition to some werewolves. They were humans, but they all had a solemn aura. They seemed to be either rich or noble and had an extraordinary background. As for the werewolves behind the wolf ancestor, they were only wearing very primitive animal skins, revealing large parts of their skin and holding stone clubs and strange knives. Moreover, it could be seen that the animal skins were mostly used to cover the private parts. Most of them were used to cover the crotch area and not to protect the body from the cold. It seems that there are different groups within the wolf clan, just like the clean clothes faction and the dirty clothes faction of the beggar sect. When Zhang Tian saw this, he clicked his tongue and felt that it was very interesting. "Mr. Jiang, thank you for saving me." And Fia bowed deeply to Zhang Tian with a face full of gratitude. "If it weren't for you, I would have definitely died." At this moment, she was truly filled with gratitude and admiration for Zhang Tian. Deep in her heart, she was also somewhat ashamed. Along the way, she repeatedly doubted Zhang Tian's strength, believing that Zhang Tian was not worthy of being her companion. Compared to people like Xiao En, Anfia felt that Zhang Tian was too inferior. He was cowardly, weak and incompetent. But reality proved that Xiao En and everyone else were like clowns compared to Zhang Tian. Only in times of danger would a person's nature be revealed. There was no doubt that whether it was courage, ability or charisma, Xiao En could not even compare to Zhang Tian's finger. Recalling how she had repeatedly looked down on Zhang Tian along the way, and Fia's face was so red that it was about to bleed. Zhang Tian was definitely an expert. His strength far surpassed Connolly's and could even be compared to the legendary Wolf King. It was just that he kept a low profile and did not want to show off. Such a man was too tempting. And Fia even felt that even the Russian emperor paled in comparison to Zhang Tian. The Russian emperor liked to show off his masculinity. He rode horses and hunted deer, becoming the idol of all Russian women. However, Anfia knew that every time the emperor went out hunting, there would be a large number of helicopters patrolling the sky to protect him. Zhang Tian was too lazy to say anything, so he turned and left. The reason why he had taken action was more because the snow demon would harm people and not because of Anfia. Zhang Tian did not have a good impression of her. If she had not been careless and underestimated the enemy, so many people would not have died. Of course, those people who died were not good people. If they died, then they died. Zhang Tian did not care. Anfia could feel the obvious distance in Zhang Tian's attitude. However, she was unwilling to give up and hurriedly followed Zhang Tian. On the way, she kept crying out in pain, hoping that Zhang Tian would notice her. It would be even better if he could help her. But unfortunately, Zhang Tian didn't even look at her from start to finish. Anfia could not help but have a bitter expression. She sighed deeply, and a strong sense of regret welled up in her heart. She was full of regret. She knew that Zhang Tian did not treat her as a friend. She knew that she had missed out on Zhang Tian, this godlike man. At this time, Xiao En, Connolly and the others had woken up. Seeing Zhang Tian and Anfia walking over one after another, Xiao En hurriedly went up to support Anfia. He asked with concern, "Anfia, are you okay? Where are those monsters?" Slap. Anfia swung her hand and gave him a slap. She shouted with disdain, "Xiao En, I've seen you clearly. You're a piece of trash." Xiao En staggered from the slap and almost fell to the ground. He looked at Zhang Tian with resentment and anger. If there was no comparison with Zhang Tian, he would not have appeared so cowardly, and Anfia would not have looked down on him. Connolly and the others were also ashamed. His action of abandoning his employer and running away was despicable. Those monsters were all killed by Mr. Jiang. You don't have to run. Don't be afraid. Anfia said with a cold face. Mr. Jiang is actually so powerful. Suddenly, everyone looked at Zhang Tian with new eyes. They could not believe it. Those two monsters were too powerful. Even laser guns could not kill them. Even Connolly could not do anything to them. However, Zhang Tian had killed them. Then they looked at each other with hesitation. They did not know the habits of the snow fiends. They did not know that Zhang Tian had already killed all the snow fiends. Now they were worried that the snow fiends would appear again. They were hesitant about whether they should build a good relationship with Zhang Tian and let Zhang Tian protect them. However, when they thought about how they looked down on Zhang Tian, they felt a little embarrassed. In the end, the fear of death overwhelmed their pride. Xiao En said with a fawning face, Mr. Jiang, I really underestimated you. So you're the best. The next moment he strode over, puffed out his chest and said proudly, let's make a deal. If you're willing to protect me along the way, I'm willing to give you $100,000. $100,000 was equivalent to 600,000 to 700,000 renminbi. In 2011 it was still very tempting. Get lost. Zhang Tian said. What did you say? Xiao En could not believe it and his face was filled with anger. As the descendant of Alexander, his family was one of the top 10 oligarchs in Russia. Even the mayor of Moscow had to be courteous to him. He had never been scolded so disrespectfully. I said get lost. Zhang Tian directly swung out a palm, slapping Xiao En's face. Xiao En was sent flying 8 meters away. His cheeks were broken and his cheekbones were cracked. Half of his teeth fell out. He lay on the ground and groaned for a long time before he got up. Mr. Jiang, how dare you hit Xiao En? Do you know who he is? One of Xiao En's companions helped him up, then roared loudly at Zhang Tian. His name was Michael and he was also the son of an oligarch. His family was in the natural gas industry and was listed on the Forbes list of the world's richest people. Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that? Zhang Tian said sarcastically. Even if I kill him, what can I do? What can you do if I kill all of you? Michael couldn't believe it. He was so angry that he laughed. Kill us? How arrogant of you. If I tell you who he is, you'll be scared to death. Do you think he's just rich? He's the descendant of Wolf King Alexander. Wolf King? If he comes, he'll have to kneel before me. Zhang Tian smiled disdainfully. How dare you insult my noble and powerful ancestor? Xiao En pointed angrily at Zhang Tian, his hands trembling in anger. Michael also sneered, his heart full of mockery. What a reckless fool. Xiao En might not be able to kill you now, but once he leaves the island and reaches the heart of Russia, he can summon a large number of werewolves to kill you. Connolly also shook his head. Zhang Tian had offended Xiao En too thoroughly this time. It was not a wise decision. Right at this moment, rumble, rumble, a snow dragon swept up in the distance as a dozen or so experts rushed over. When Anfia saw the man in the lead, she was dumbfounded and scared out of her wits. This is big trouble. Someone is going to die. The newcomers were Alexander and the Wolf King's clan. When Anfia saw her father behind the Wolf King, she hurriedly ran over and said, Dad, help me plead. This Wuxia youth saved me before. Anfia, why did you come to this place? It's too dangerous. Anfia's father, Berezov, was a financial oligarch. From his point of view, he naturally didn't want to offend Alexander because of Zhang Tian. After all, he was the backing of many oligarchs. He looked indifferently at Zhang Tian and shook his head. Anfia, he beat up Alexander's descendant. If Alexander doesn't kill him, I'll give him some compensation. Dad, if you don't speak now, he'll be killed by Alexander. Anfia pleaded with a sobbing tone. Berezov shook his head, not moved in the slightest. When Xiao En saw Alexander, he immediately ran over and pointed at Zhang Tian. Your Excellency Wolf King, he wanted to kill me and even insulted you. Hurry up and tear him to shreds. As he spoke, he looked at Zhang Tian in a threatening manner, as if Zhang Tian was already a dead man. Caucasian shaman Connolly greets Your Excellency Wolf King. Connolly also bowed deeply to Alexander to express his utmost respect. Apart from the reclusive wolf ancestor and a few other old monsters, Alexander could be considered the #1 expert in Russia. Although Connolly was a shaman compared to Alexander, he was still too far behind. Kid, are you regretting it now? You actually dared to disrespect the Wolf King. You're dead. After bowing to Alexander, my Ken and the other young masters looked at Zhang Tian proudly. Since the Wolf King was here, they had nothing to fear, not even the threat of those monsters. And the arrival of the Wolf King was tantamount to announcing the death of this arrogant Wuxia kid. Chapter 746. Connolly also fanned the flames. Your Excellency Wolf King, this person is a Wuxia Dharma cultivator. He might have a spatial artifact. Before you kill him, you must force him to hand over that artifact. Everyone thought that the Wolf King was going to kill Zhang Tian. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King's face stiffened. Bastard! How dare you disrespect Master Kong? In the next moment, his face was filled with anger. Without saying a word, he directly slapped Xiao En on the head. Smack! Sean's head was bleeding. He flew more than 10 meters away and rolled on the ground. He was half dead and barely breathing. Then, under Anfia's shocked gaze, Alexander quickly walked up to Zhang Tian and bent his knees. He knelt down, lowered his arrogant head and said with a trembling voice, My Excellency Wolf King Little Liger. Little Wolf Alexander greets Your Excellency Zhang Ligua. I wish Grandmaster Zhang Ligua to improve every day and live a long life. As soon as he said that, there was dead silence. Anfia, Connolly, my Ken Berzov and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes as they stared at the young man in plain clothes, whose sleeves were fluttering in the wind and whose aura was otherworldly. The Wolf King's status in Russia was too high. Just like Yi Zhantian in Wuxia, he could talk to the Russian emperor directly and talk to the Northern Army commander as equals. In the eyes of Anfia, Michael and the others, he was like a high and mighty god, awe-inspiring and inviolable. But now, this famous Wolf King actually called himself Little Wolf, and knelt down respectfully in front of Zhang Tian. This was too unbelievable. It was like a legend. In an instant, everyone couldn't come back to their senses. Their faces were full of shock and confusion. They wondered what kind of background this Wuxia young man had to be able to make the Wolf King kneel down and submit to him. It's him. Suddenly, Berezov's expression changed rapidly. He suddenly exclaimed, Dad, who is he? Anfia and the others were still confused. The werewolves and oligarchs such as Berezov had already stepped forward and bowed deeply. They said in an unprecedentedly respectful tone, Greetings, National Hunter Master Kong. Xiao En suddenly realized something and his face turned as white as a sheet of paper. He was scared out of his wits and he knelt down and begged for mercy. Connolly's body trembled and he shook his head with a wry smile. A trace of despair flashed in his eyes. I should have known. Among all the Chinese in the world, he's definitely the only one with such a powerful cultivation at such a young age. Seeing that the Wolf King's arm had yet to heal, Zhang Tian could not help but shake his head. It seemed that he still wanted her to help him fix his arm. That's right, Wolf King Alexander was indeed thinking this way. He knew that Zhang Tian's magic power was deep and unfathomable. To be able to restore Zhang Qianlei's youth, he must have a secret method to repair an arm. Since the wolf ancestor wasn't going to help him, he might as well rely on Zhang Tian. However, Zhang Tian would not accept him for nothing. He had to pay some price to show his loyalty. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiaoen. Is this your son? Along the way he was disrespectful to me time and time again, trying to harm me. How dare you offend Master Kong? You really don't know what's good for you. Alexander stood up and without saying a word he grabbed Xiaoen's head with his large hand. Amidst Xiaoen's shrill screams he suddenly twisted and directly twisted his head off. Alexander had spread his family in Russia and had many children. Xiaoen should be considered his 6th generation of children, and he had at least hundreds of such children. Killing one was not a pity at all. Moreover, the wolf clan was extremely vicious and cruel to begin with. They could not be judged by common sense. Once there was a child that he was dissatisfied with, the Wolf King had always killed him without mercy. Originally he was extremely respectful of Zhang Tian, and he had a favor to ask of Zhang Tian. But now Xiaoen had offended Zhang Tian. This infuriated the Wolf King to the extreme, but also to the extreme of fear. With Jiang Tian's current strength, he might be able to defeat Master Kong, who was known as the Hunter of Nations, and hunt down France. Even the sect leader of Huaxia's ancient Wudong sect, Qin Onping, and the leader of the Chinese Hong sect, Sita Yuanhao, were killed by him. Now Jiang Tian could defeat a mortal deity with 1 foot, and he was known as Earth Immortal Jiang. How could the Wolf King be a match for him? 10 Wolf Kings were not enough to fill the gaps between Jiang Tian's teeth. It could be said that if Jiang Tian wanted to, he could kill all the moon-worshipping wolves in a few breaths. For the Wolf King, as long as he could appease Jiang Tian's thunderous anger, what harm was there in killing 1 or 2 of his children? Shaowen's bloody head rolled to the ground. Mai Ken and the others were dumbfounded. They were so scared that they wet their pants. Their legs trembled as if they had seen a demon. This was too terrifying. Shaowen was the Wolf King's son, and his blood flowed in his veins. But now the Wolf King had killed him just because of Jiang Tian's words. This showed how much the Wolf King respected Jiang Tian. At this moment they were filled with regret. The lamb that they thought they could bully it will turned out to be a peerless powerhouse who could suppress the Wolf King. How could they be so blind as to offend such a terrifying existence? In fact, they should have known how powerful Jiang Tian was from the fact that Jiang Tian did not die after jumping off the plane. However, their prejudice against the Chinese made them look down on and offend Jiang Tian again and again. In their eyes, the Chinese were weak and easily bullied. They were as vulnerable as sheep. They had been enemies with Jiang Tian all this time, and finally they were faced with death. Look, I told you that the Wolf King can't do anything to me even if I kill you. Do you believe me now? Jiang Tian chuckled, glanced at everyone, and said leisurely, I told you that I can kill all of you without a problem. Do you believe me now? We believe you. Master Kong, we believe you. Master Kong, please forgive me. I'm willing to be your servant. Connolly, Mai Ken, and the rest were trembling with fear. They kowtowed to Jiang Tian like they were pounding garlic. They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies. Their heads knocked heavily on the ice and rocks, causing them to bleed profusely. Blood flowed down from their heads. Believe me and I'll kill you all the same. Jiang Tian's expression was cold. He snorted and kicked Mai Ken to death. Your Excellency. Mai Ken's father, who was also an oligarch under the Wolf King's protection, cried out in shock and anger. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you too. The Wolf King's cold eyes stared at Mai Ken's father as he scolded coldly. Yes. Mai Ken's father was originally gnashing his teeth, but he was shocked when he saw the Wolf King's determination. In the end, the hatred in his heart turned into a deep sigh. Connolly was shocked when he saw Mai Ken was killed. He turned around and ran, his body turning into a flame. The person who can escape from my hands hasn't been born yet. Die. The corners of Jiang Tian's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. However, he did not attack and only shouted. The next moment, Connolly's body was shattered and his divine soul was annihilated. He turned into a pile of ashes and fell to the ground. On the surface, Connolly was the leader of the Xianxia family's guard regiment, but his real identity was not ordinary. He was one of the 5 shamans of an ancient sect in the Caucasus. He was able to control fire, and even transcendent grandmasters had to be careful when he used the hellfire. But at this time in front of Jiang Tian, he didn't even last a second and died a violent death, his body and soul destroyed. When everyone saw this, they felt their hair stand on end and were filled with fear. Even the Wolf King was shaken and emotionally moved. Master Kang's power seemed to have improved a lot. He was so powerful that he couldn't even fathom how powerful he was. Even if he wanted to kill Connolly, it would take at least 15 minutes. However, he had never thought that Jiang Tian would be able to kill him with the incantation of truth. Jiang Tian didn't want to kill the rest of the people. They were just a bunch of ants. After that, the Wolf King would naturally make them wish they were dead. Even their families would suffer. He is the world-famous Kong Techu. Berezov finally revealed Jiang Tian's name to his daughter. He is the one who suppressed France and defeated a mortal deity. What? Is Kong Techu? Anfia's face paled. As the daughter of an oligarch and a former member of the KGB, she had heard of Jiang Tian. After the other young masters and the guards talked for a while, their faces were filled with fear. They were scared out of their wits. Ever since Zhang Tian started to develop overseas, he was like the sun in the sky in the world, especially in the upper-class society. His name shook the world. During the battle with Sidoni, he had defeated the Pantheon of Gods, Winter Soldier and Blue Storm, the three top organizations in the world. During the Gulf of Tonkin incident, he had forced President Xianxia to step down and the President of the European Union to bow his head. Xianxia was extremely regretful at this moment. She had missed the opportunity. If she had treated Zhang Tian courteously and valued him, she could have at least become Zhang Tian's friend. If she had become Zhang Tian's friend, her family would have been invincible in Russia. Even the Wolf King would have to give her face. However, she had missed the opportunity. Master Kong, are you here for the opening of the Sword Catacomb? Wolf King Alexander asked. That's right. Zhang Tian nodded and asked with a frown, you know about the Sword Catacomb too? Master Kong, the reason why the Winter Soldier chose to be stationed in the Severnaya Zemlya was to make it easier to explore the secrets of the Sword Catacomb. The Wolf King said respectfully. For a long time, the gene fusion between werewolves and ordinary humans could not be successfully edited. There was a rejection reaction. When the Sword Catacomb opened last time, we obtained a divine herb inside. After the genetic warrior consumed it, the fusion was successful. Can be said that without the Sword Catacomb, there would be no Winter Soldier. In addition, the Wolf clan obtained some ancient books and magic weapons from it, which made us very powerful. My method of controlling moonlight was actually obtained from the Sword Catacomb. At this point, his face was full of longing. But before this, we had only explored the periphery of the Sword Catacomb and did not enter the core area. With Master Kang's power, he should be able to enter the core area and gain a lot. Let's go. Zhang Tian was straightforward. His figure was like a dragon as he flew into the distance. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves and quickly followed. People like Berezov and Xianxia could only follow from a distance. Their speed was too slow. While flying, the Wolf King suddenly said in a low voice, Master Kong, you have to be careful. This time the wolf ancestor is also going. That old man just now? Zhang Tian said with a disdainful smile. Chapter 747. Yes. He saw Master Kong just now, but he didn't greet him. He turned around and went toward the Sword Tomb. Obviously he wants to monopolize the Sword Tomb. The Wolf King smiled bitterly. In this world, only Master Kong dared to call the wolf ancestor an old man. He wants to monopolize the Sword Tomb? He thinks too highly of himself. Zhang Tian laughed and sped up. If he dares to provoke me, I'll slap him to death. It turned out that Zhang Tian deliberately slowed down in order to observe the snow demon. Now that the snow demon had been destroyed, Zhang Tian's speed soared. In just 2 to 3 hours he arrived before a mountain range. Zhang Tian was afraid that the Wolf King and the others would fall behind. Otherwise he would be even faster. 9 glacial peaks rose from the ground. They were dozens of meters high and extremely steep, like sharp swords inserted into the ground. These 9 peaks were also connected by glaciers, forming a valley with a radius of half a kilometer. In the valley, white fog and snowflakes swirled in the air. There were powerful fluctuations of magic power, and there were flashing lights swallowing and spitting out auspicious colors. It contrasted well with the aurora in the sky, looking very attractive. At the entrance of the valley there was a stone tablet. On it, there were 2 large words written in iron and silver, Sword Tomb. This is a real sharp sword. A sword that is dozens or even hundreds of meters long, and it's a quasi-spiritual weapon. The immortal of 9 swords is really extraordinary. Zhang Tian looked at the 9 peaks and projected his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel shocked and slightly moved. But he didn't expect that when Zhang Tian arrived, Xianxia, Berezov and the others had already arrived. It turned out that after the snow demon died, the strange electromagnetic interference immediately disappeared. Satellite phones, walkie-talkies and other communication devices could be used. In order to explore the secrets of the Sword Tomb, Berezov and these oligarchs built a modern base on a nearby island with helicopters, snowmobiles and so on. Now that the communication was smooth, they immediately called a helicopter and arrived first. In fact, they were not the only ones who had arrived. Dozens of Russian grand shamans and physical awakeners had also arrived. These grand shamans, sorcerers and physique awakened ones were all extremely powerful. They were as powerful as transcendent grandmasters or Dharma spell masters. Among them, some of the most outstanding ones could even be said to be half a step into the divine realm or even the divine realm. When Jiang Tian and the Wolf King arrived, these Russian powerhouses only nodded slightly, not showing much respect. The Wolf King's strength was actually at the deity realm. Many of these experts' cultivation levels were not far from his. In fact, some hidden experts might even be stronger than him. After all, the Wolf King Alexander was only the strongest person in Russia. There were those who were more powerful than him in seclusion. However, Berezov immediately led Xianxia and the others to break through the wind and snow and greeted them with a look of despair. Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, the Wolf Ancestor and his subordinates won't let us in. Don't let anyone else in. Jiang Tian scanned the valley with his immortal will and saw a few hundred werewolves scattered around the valley. Every single one of them held sharp blades and magic tools in their hands, and they stood ramrods straight like sentinels. They were completely silent and solemn, and their gazes were fierce as they swept the surroundings, seeming as if they would directly annihilate the slightest disagreement. The wolf ancestor sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley with a mighty mace next to him. His eyes were closed and he was motionless. His body was covered in thick snow and he looked like an ice sculpture. There was a line in front of him and a line of words was written in Chinese, English and Russian. A line of domineering words. Anyone who crosses this line will die. It was strange. The snow was falling and the wind was howling. However, the heavy snow couldn't cover the words and the wind couldn't blow them away. It seemed that the words contained a certain amount of Dharma power, which made the wind and snow go away. Because of this, the grand shamans, sorcerers and physique awakened ones didn't dare to take a step forward. The wolf ancestor doesn't only have a strong bloodline and body, but he also has a lot of Dharma power. Seeing this, the Wolf King's face showed a hint of fear and envy. He approached Jiang Tian and reported. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain. What Dharma power? In terms of Dharma power, even if the nine-sword deity was still alive, he wouldn't be a match for Kong Teichu. Even if the nine-sword deity was really from the ruins of immortality, the ruins of immortality was still an extremely remote place in the entire realm of cultivation. How could the people from the ruins of immortality be more powerful than Jiang Tian, who had been cultivating for 10,000 years? Wolf King, the wolf ancestor, is the ancestor. So you should be his son, right? However, Jiang Tian didn't want to talk about this, so he asked. Master Kong, there are many branches of the werewolves. I belong to the moon-worshipping werewolves and he belongs to the icefield werewolves. There are also the grassland werewolves and the bloodthirsty werewolves. I don't belong to the same clan as him, so I'm not his son. The Wolf King said respectfully. As for the name of the wolf ancestor, it's actually based on strength. Every 60 years, the werewolves of the world will hold a duel and the most powerful one will be called the wolf ancestor. The wolf ancestor is the most powerful werewolf in the last duel. However, he hates humans and wants the werewolves to rule the world. He calls himself a loner, but the other werewolves don't recognize him. Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of contempt. He sneered and said, "Ha, arrogant fool. Even among the thousands of races in the universe, humans were still the most powerful cultivation race, let alone these werewolves." Seeing this, the Wolf King said seriously. But Master Kong, this kid is indeed very powerful. I heard that he had entered Wuxia in the late Qing dynasty and his strength was enough to crush Chen Anping and the others. He also experienced the Napoleonic Wars. Some even said that he was the key to the Russian Tsar's victory over the stronger Napoleon. He has lived for 300 years. Jiang Tian scanned with his immortal will and wasn't surprised. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The wolf ancestor was 300 years old? That was too scary. He was not human at all. He was a living fossil. That's right. The Wolf King's face was gloomy. He frowned and said, "The wolf ancestor and the dire wolves are the native werewolves of Russia. They have been inextricably linked to the Russian Tsar since ancient times. 200 years ago, Napoleon swept across Europe and went on an expedition to Russia. The Russian Tsar at that time was muddle-headed and useless. Napoleon swept his way through and successfully took over Moscow. But after Napoleon took over Moscow, he took the initiative to retreat. On the way back, he suffered from extremely cold weather and was defeated in the end. As far as I know, The key to Russia's victory was the help of the dire wolves. Why is this related to the wolf ancestor? Xianxia asked curiously. According to the historical records, it was because of a fire in Moscow which was occupied by France. The French's provisions, cannons and firearms were all destroyed in the fire. They had no choice but to retreat from Moscow. And when the French retreated, they suffered from extreme cold. The weather was not on their side, so they lost. Don't you think it's strange? The Wolf King smiled. Napoleon's army had already taken over Moscow and set up a temporary government and police. But a super fire broke out in Moscow, and the fire was all in important military areas. And it was only October at that time, but the cold wave came a few months in advance and turned Russia into a world of ice and snow. The Wolf King said solemnly. In fact, the Russian military intelligence had already deciphered it. This was all done by the wolf ancestor and his disciples. They were the ones who set the French's military camp on fire. The wolf ancestor also summoned wind and snow to bring extreme weather, freezing tens of thousands of French soldiers to death. In the Yaroslavets region, just a few dozen dire wolves slaughtered 100,000 French soldiers. The wolf ancestor alone killed more than 30,000 people. What? One person slaughtered 30,000 soldiers. Everyone was shocked and could not believe it. They looked at the wolf ancestor with shock and fear. They did not expect this skinny and ordinary-looking old man to have such a valiant battle record. At that time there were already cannons and guns. Although they were not as powerful as the modern army, it was still very scary to be able to kill 30,000 people alone. Besides, that was 200 years ago. The wolf ancestor had been cultivating for so long. How powerful must he be? Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, why don't we just call it a day? At this moment, everyone had the intention of retreating out of fear of difficulties. With the wolf ancestor here, it was truly a case of one man holding back 10,000 men. Anyone who wanted to enter the sword tomb was courting death. Master Kong was very powerful, but he was still not as powerful as this old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. The wolf ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He had been on the power rankings several times 100 years ago and was on par with Zeus of the older generation. The Wolf King sighed enviously. It was said that although he lost to Hao Taichung, the top swordsman of the late Qing dynasty, he was able to escape unscathed. In Russia, when the Tsar was still alive, the wolf ancestor was on equal footing with the Tsar. Even the commander-in-chief of the military had to be courteous to him. He was much more powerful than I am now. What he said was true. Martial artists, cultivators, superpower users and other super overlords were related to modern technology, especially military technology. 200 years ago, technology was not so developed. Overlords like the wolf ancestor who could fight against 10,000 people alone were like weapons of mass destruction and strategic weapons. They were highly valued by the governments of the major countries, just like humanoid nuclear bombs. But with the rise of technology, the secular governments had a new reliance and didn't want these super overlords to be in power. The status of super overlords was severely weakened. Even the United States and other major countries used to hunt down immortal state warriors all over the world. The moon-worshipping Wolf King and his people, as well as the kindred, were once chased by the modern army like stray dogs. Super overlords like the Palace of Gods and the Winter Army didn't dare to challenge the modern army no matter how powerful they were. Instead, they struggled under the support and control of the modern army and became their vassals and murderous tools. However, after the October Revolution, the Russian regime collapsed. Many of the wolf ancestor and his people were killed. He didn't want to be loyal to the new regime, so he went to the northern islands and hid in the wolf ancestor mountain. The Wolf King's deep eyes flashed with a hint of vicissitudes. He sighed with a gloomy face. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded. The next moment he walked lazily toward the entrance of the sword vault and said calmly, "A good dog doesn't block the way. Get out of my way." You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.